Hello. So good afternoon, guys. My name is Arsh Sharma, and I'll be taking this workshop based on one HTML and one CSS project today. All right. So I hope you all are excited. We are going to make a basic YouTube clone. Now, of course, just to mention, when you saw YouTube clone, this is a front end development workshop, right? So when I say YouTube clone, I actually mean that we'll be making it in a way so that everything that we see on the screen, the live video, the comments, the options that we have on the top, all of them come to be the same as you see in a YouTube app on your browser. And we'll also make it responsive, of course, so that for small screens also it is visible. So that's how we are going to mostly proceed. I hope I'm audible to everyone also. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So, in the middle, if there are any discrepancies where you might feel that either my voice is breaking or some issue is coming, or if you have any doubts, you can always mention those things in the chat. I'll be making sure that I check most of the things at every time possible, and I'll be able to answer most of your queries in the middle as well. So, beginning with my experience with web development, I would say that I started all this around 2 to 2.5 years back. And I started, first of all, with my own research. Like, I'm a self taught developer, so I started with my own research as to what all things are actually there in the industry, what all programming languages are there, what all things we can do with that. All right. Yeah, the screen might be shaking because of this table. It was moving a little bit. Sorry. I think, is it fine now? Yeah. Is my screen still shaking? Yeah, Ankush, I'll start fast, don't worry. So I was saying that in my experience, first of all, I tried noticing about what all things we have available in the industry. Okay, what all languages we have, what all things we can achieve from different kinds of languages. We have front end, we have back end. Of course, we're going to dive into much more depth with all of this. But for now, I would like to mention that I started with, of course, HTML and CSS because those are the things that help you make a website look the way you want it to. And that's one of the best superpowers about coding as well. I feel that whatever you can imagine, you can actually create that. Okay, that's one of the superpowers that programming gives you. And just a simple question before I move forward. Are all of you like familiar with HTML and CSS, or are you all completely new to it? Yeah, guys, I'm waiting for your responses. How much would you rate yourself in HTML and CSS from 1 to 10? 1 being you don't know HTML at all, and 10 being, of course, that you know it very well. Okay, familiar, new, then completely new, little familiar, new, familiar. All right. Yeah, Sriram, this workshop is actually from scratch. Like, of course, I'll be telling all the basic concepts we have in HTML, all the basic concepts we have in CSS, and accordingly, we'll be moving forward with our project as well. Okay, so it won't be that it's completely new. I'm going to focus more on the project side, but of course, whatever things are required in the project, the things that we use very often, okay, the things that we use in all of our projects, most of our projects, like text, images, some of the things are very common in each and every web page that you see. And front end development is exactly about that, right? Whatever website you open, the way it looks, the client side part of a website, which is how the website is actually looking, that part is the front end part of a website, right? How the website is looking. That's the main and the most important thing. One of the most important things, of course, when we consider all the aspects of a website is, of course, how it looks. If it looks well, people are going to be impressed. If it looks like very normal, doesn't have any effects, doesn't have any colors, it's just plain text, of course, nobody would like such kind of a website anymore. Of course, when the internet was invented, at that point, the only reason we had that was to share some information with other people. So as we moved forward, in the beginning, the static HTML web pages that we had, okay, HTML is what? Nothing but the backbone of a web page. Backbone as in all the components that you see on a web page, whether it is a button, whether it is an image, whether it is text, whether it is links, or any sort of a thing you can see on a website, is part of an HTML component. Of course, how it looks, whether what its color is, what its font size is, everything, every such property that you can imagine on a component. Like let's imagine a button. A button might not have any text. It might have a small size. It might have a big size. It might have a border. It might have a background color. So first part were the components that we make using HTML in a web page. All the components, we first put all the components we require on a web page, and then how we want it to look, the colors, the visuals, the buttons, everything, the way you want it to look, that part is given using CSS. So I hope all of you are clear now with what exactly HTML and CSS at least does for now, right? Is everything clear till now on? Yeah, all right. Great. So I think everything's clear, right? Moving, PHP is a totally different language. Like it can also be used for web development, but we are going to be focusing only on HTML and CSS for today. So I would appreciate if other programming languages are not mentioned. Like, guys, there are two kinds of web pages. Okay, can anyone tell what are those two kinds of web pages? Anyone? What all? What are the types of different web pages that we have? Exactly, guys. Very nice. I'm glad most of you know that. So there are static web pages and then there are dynamic web pages. Okay, so what static web pages are? They are those kinds of web pages or those kinds of websites that only convey some information. Okay, only conveying information as in the websites that you see which only has some articles maybe. So you can do some reading there, but you can't interact with the website. Okay, that's one difference between having a static web page. Okay, so static web page only shows you some basic information. Okay, that's what static web pages do. Now what dynamic web pages are they can interact with the user, that's of course who is of course on the website. Like what if we click a button, what if we put a mouse somewhere and something needs to change, what if we click on a link and only then we should go to some other web page. So all of these interactions that a website might have with the user, if they exist, then it is a dynamic web page. If there's just some information on in front of you on the website, then that's considered to be a static web page. So static web page is of course one of those that we are going to create today as well, because HTML and CSS helps us to achieve that. Whereas dynamic web pages have to include JavaScript as well. And of course, as we move forward in our course at AccioJob, we start with HTML and CSS. We create a lot of variety of static web pages, right? We create various kinds of projects, and then we move on to the dynamic web page part, that is JavaScript and other languages like that. Of course, how YouTube will look today, that's the front end part of it. If this were a back end workshop, we would also focus on how the user is able to subscribe, how are we able to store that which user is logged in, all these features that happen in the background, okay, that you are not able to see. You are not able to see that when you enter your login and when you enter your password, what exactly YouTube or any other website that requires your credentials is doing in the background. Okay, you don't see that. Of course, you might know that, you have to know it, you're a developer, you should know that. But that's not visible. Okay, so those things which happen in the background but are not visible to you, that's actually the server side of a website. Okay, and the part that we see, that's the client side of the website. Client side is also known as front end part, and server side is also known as the back end part. No, DOM we won't be doing today, Santu. And Prabir, actually, yeah, you have a valid question that things are being replaced by AI. Okay, but AI, like what all can it do? You have various frameworks to make web pages these days as well. But what happens is if you're making frameworks or if you are making a website using such frameworks, then you will be able to make a website according to their approach, according to the things that they might have. But to include your own styles, to make everything according to your own requirement, you need to focus on the coding part, of course, and not such frameworks. That's where HTML and CSS helps you. And of course, a lot of companies, how they would give work to a front end developer, how that mostly works is that they will give you a particular design. Maybe it can be made on Figma, maybe it can be made on Adobe Photoshop, Adobe XD. There are a lot of softwares for making those web designs, right? So converting them into code is most efficiently done using, of course, HTML and CSS and its frameworks. We're not going to be using any CSS frameworks today. We'll be doing plain CSS and plain HTML. Okay, and that's how we are going to proceed. All right. Yeah, I'm starting fast. Don't worry, guys. Okay. All right. So now let me just share my screen and I'll show you the platform where we'll be making all of the project and learning all of these. So I think you might have heard of REPL.IT. They'll be proceeding with this platform is because doing the code on VS Code and then showing it to you guys on Chrome, that will be a lot of switching from one window to the other. So instead, I'll be using just one window. I'll be sharing that. You will be able to see the code and the output at all the points. As we begin, I'll tell you the few basic HTML. Okay, I'll tell you the few basic HTML concepts that we'll be using in our project, and then we'll be starting with the project. So with the basic things that are there, like I told you in all the web pages, those things I'll be explaining first, and then we'll begin with the HTML part of our project. Then as soon as we finish it, I'll tell you the CSS concepts that are very important to understand, and then we'll begin with the CSS part. Of course, during the project, there will be some new things introduced. So those things might not be required at all of your web pages or inside all of your web pages. So at that point only, I'm going to explain it to you. Of course, none of the companies require you guys to learn or memorize, I should say, memorize all these concepts. Okay, you don't have to memorize or I should say, like learn everything by heart. Like you don't have to memorize everything. All you need to do is understand how each thing is working. And if you can do that, then of course you'll be able to figure out how to achieve a certain thing that we might have. All right. So yeah, that's how we'll be moving forward. In the middle, if you guys have any doubts, I'll be answering them. Okay. So yeah, is my screen visible? This is a clone, Charan. Like we'll be making like a YouTube clone. I'll also show you guys the output that we have. Okay. Yeah, I think you'll be able to get the video as well as the code after the session. Don't worry. Okay, so let me start. First of all, what we do in HTML. So, like I said, we have various components in HTML, right? And we need to create all of those components ourselves, whether it is a heading, whether it is some basic text, whether it is an image, all of them are nothing but different components. So, now how do we write such components? First thing that we do in an HTML file is whenever you create the file, it has a suffix called .html. That's always the way you got to end your file's name in HTML so that the browser knows what kind of a file it is. And if you mention that, it will know that it needs to open that in a browser. Okay, so always with an HTML file, we give the suffix of .html. Prefix, the name of the file, you can keep whatever you like, but the suffix should always be .html. All right. Yeah. I'm going to zoom in whenever I'll be typing anything, but I think the text size would be enough. Still, in case it's not visible, you guys can always type. So once you start an HTML file, there is a thing that you have to mention in the middle that tells the browser to use the latest version of HTML. Okay, so how we use the latest version of HTML so that the browser is also comfortable with all the new things we might introduce in our file is by writing a simple tag called doc type HTML. So that's how we just begin an HTML file by writing doc type HTML. This will tell the browser to use the latest version of HTML. That's all it does. Okay. And this is the output where I'll be showing you all the outputs, of course. So let's start with that. Okay. कुछ दिख नहीं रहा है, your camera is shaking. Yeah. Of course, Rajesh, you can put it in your resume. Is the text visible now, guys? Like, is the screen size enough? Should I zoom in a bit? All right. Like, is it visible now? No. All right. I'll zoom it a little bit more. All right. Perfect. Okay, guys. So I think now all of you would be able to see. So I'll just move forward. So now, whenever you start an HTML file, of course, if an HTML file has various kinds of components for each thing that we have on a web page, there would be a component that is storing all of them. Like, of course, you can't randomly put things anywhere, right? There must be a structure that we need to follow while creating an HTML file. Okay, so that structure, everything inside your HTML file, whether it is visible on the page or whether it is not, it might be just a description of the web page for the browser, which is not visible on our screen in the output. Even those things have to be put inside a tag called, of course, the HTML tag. And whenever you start a tag, in 95% of the cases, there are, of course, a few exceptions that we will also see, you have to close that tag as well. Because, of course, if you, let's say, are starting your HTML file, there must be some point where that HTML file would be ending, right? So you always have to mention the closing tag as well. This IDE is called repl.id. Okay, and there is this HTML file here. I've also added all the images we'll be needing for a YouTube clone so that you guys can see what all images I'm using. Okay, screen is blurry. I don't know why that's happening. I think my internet connection is pretty good. Yeah, all right. So I'll continue as. So after we have this HTML tag introduced, this one part is called the starting tag, where it is closing. That part is called the closing tag. And this, both of these tags together is one HTML component, you can say. Okay, so in between this only, I'll be mentioning all the things inside our HTML file. Okay. Now, inside our HTML file, we have two sections. Okay, what are these two sections? One is the head section, another one is the body section. Okay, now what both of these things mean? So, of course, if they are sections, let me create those sections first of all. So, if one section is called the head section and it starts here, it needs to end somewhere as well, hence the closing tag, like I told you. And since these two are different sections, of course, okay, these two are since different sections, that's why the other section won't be written inside this head section, guys. It would be written after the head section, but still, since we are inside the same HTML file, I won't go outside this HTML tag. All right, I hope you understood this part. So the HTML file is always divided into two sections, the head section and the body section. Now, inside the head section, yeah, Rajesh, you can do it simultaneously on your IDE if you like. That's not a problem. But of course, wherever there are topics that you feel you are not very clear with, make sure you focus at that point. The code and everything you can get later on, but this live session will end at 6, right? So just make sure are the important topics, whichever you feel like. If you don't know, then of course all the topics. So make sure you are at least listening carefully at those points. Yeah, guys, increase your video quality if the screen is not clear for you all. Okay, because the internet seems fine, so I think there's no problem from my side. All right. Yeah. So now we have two sections, the head section and the body section. So inside the body section, whatever you see on a particular web page, okay, those all components come inside the body section. Now, inside the head section, whatever you write, that would not be visible ever on this white area. Okay, those things are not visible here because this entire thing is just our body section. Whatever you write in the head section, whatever data you write in the head section, that's actually the metadata of our browser or for our web page. So this part usually describes our web page. Like let's say if I Google web development, okay, so we are going to see some websites here, right? No, I don't want to give permission for my location as of now. Yeah, so whatever you are seeing here, okay, let's see, there is written here web development roadmaps dash W3 schools. And then we have some text here, And then we have some questions here. Now, if I open this web page, of course, there's no surety that we are going to see everything just like this. Okay, it's not necessary that we are going to see the same heading. It's not necessary that we are going to see this text in the same order once we open the web page. What we do know for sure is this main link that you always see whenever you search anything on Google, that's actually the title of the web page that we can give ourselves. And where is that title visible? Here at the top, where right now web development dash Google search is written. So as soon as I open this link, you will see that same title here at the top, which is web development. And then of course the text is in a much different manner than it was before. So whatever things we are seeing here, this is just the metadata of the web pages that we are going to open, and this entire metadata is for the description of the web page. So here the thing that we always mention is a title for our web page. So let me just write here HTML CSS workshop, and if I run this, and if I refresh my output screen, you will be able to see that title here on the top. So now we have the title given here, HTML and CSS workshop. Okay. It would be front end, Dhananjay. We won't be using any APIs. Those are things come later on. We'll just be doing the front end part today. Let me show you guys the output as well of what we are going to achieve today. So we'll have a video working. We'll have some suggestions on the right of the same video. Of course, we are not linking our page anywhere. So let me just show you that output. Yeah, this one should be it. Yeah, can all of you see this? So we have the live video working, right? Then we have some videos here which are the same as this one, of course. But if you would like to maybe even enhance your project before, because of some time constraints, I haven't added everything differently. But here you can always change, of course, the image, what video it is, what link it's going to open. Those things you can change very easily. But this is how usually a YouTube app looks, right? We have the icon on the top, we have a search bar here, we have the button here, then we have some more buttons to follow, subscribe, then we have the icon of ESPN. All of these are nothing but different images. And then we have some same comments here, which are apparently named after GOT characters, but that's fine. So yeah, this is what we are going to create. We'll have a nav bar on the top, which is always going to be there even if I scroll down. Okay, then we have the video running here on the left, and then we have some suggestions here on the right. We have all the images that are needed as the icons. Of course, if this were backend, I would connect this button to my database and store those things, right? But that's not what we are doing here. After that, now let's move forward. All right, so I hope everyone is clear with what we are creating. Now I'll tell you some of the basic HTML concepts that we'll be using to create this. Once I've mentioned them, that's when we'll actually start with the project. Yeah, the IDE is REPL.id, and Mohit, the head section is used for describing the web page, adding the metadata to our web page, like the title, what text should be given later on, or when we are even connecting our CSS files to our HTML file, that part also we do in our link section only. Okay. So now, first of all, let's see how we give headings in HTML. So for giving a heading, you all again have to give a starting tag as well as a closing tag wherever your heading is ending. And that part I can very easily give by simply giving the same tag enclosed in angular brackets, and the name of the tags for heading is h1. Okay, h1 gives you the biggest heading. Similarly, you can give even h2. You can also give h3, and till like this, you can give headings till h6, where h1 is the biggest heading and h6 is the, of course, smallest heading that we have in HTML by default. Of course, you can using CSS, you can change its size, you can change its color, but by default, these are the heading options that we have in HTML. So I'll just copy it and paste it everywhere in the middle of the tags, of course, because the heading needs to start somewhere and end somewhere, which we mentioned using the starting and the closing tags. So if I run this, we'll have 6 headings, all of different sizes. The first one will be the biggest heading, which is our H1. And like that, we have H2 and H6 is of course our smallest heading. No, Arun, we won't be using JavaScript. All right. IDE, no, it's not VS Code. You can use VS Code as well, but I'm using REPL.it. It is good, but if I would have used VS Code, then we would have to, shift from one place to another. First, I would show you Chrome, then VS Code, and that will go on and go on. So that's why I'm just showing you on an online editor. In VS Code, of course, the code is written in the same way. It just gives you some extra shortcuts. All right. So now, after heading, let's say you want some basic text in your code. So for that, we use the paragraph tag, which is called the P tag in HTML. So I'll just write this as a paragraph tag. And now if I just run this code, we'll see the text in the smallest possible size that we have by default in JavaScript. Okay, so this is the smallest heading. Then the P tag comes out like this. Of course, if you want your text to look different, change the font size. We'll be doing all of those things. So that part is done by CSS. Right now, I'm showing you how HTML gives us any kind of an output, whether it is text or image, using their basic tags and without applying any specific properties. All right. Yeah. So now, after text, let's quickly see how we add a basic link to our web page. Okay, so I'll just write here anchor tag for a link. Whenever you want to create a link, or I should say a hyperlink in your web page, a link that you click and it gets you to a particular web page, then you will use an anchor tag for that, which is also written as A tag. So this A stands for anchor tag, this P stands for paragraph tag, and these all are heading 1, heading 2, and so on. So inside this anchor tag, let's say I write some text, let's say link to Google. So of course it can't take me to Google right now because I haven't mentioned any link right now. I've just mentioned that this will be a link to Google. If I run this, it's just some basic text right now because we haven't provided any particular link. So if I just open google.com, I copy its link, and what you need to do now is whenever you need to mention that link, you need to sometimes provide additional attributes to your components. What are the components? Heading is one component, paragraph is one component, anchor tag is another component. So sometimes these components require some specific attributes. Like for this anchor tag, the attribute that is required will have the value of where this link is going. Okay, so that part we'll mention inside an attribute called href, and this href stands for hyperlink reference, like which link you want to go to. That part will be given inside this href attribute. Okay, and here I'll just give quotes because whenever we are writing some basic text that isn't HTML code, we need to give it in quotes. Mostly you would have heard of strings, right? That part also we give in quotes. Similarly, here also you can give that part in quotes. So I've just pasted the Google link here. Now if I run the code and if I check my output, this link to Google will actually change to a link. It will be blue and it is underlined by default. And if I click on it, I'll reach the Google homepage, of course. So that's how anchor tags work in HTML. Akshay, if the video quality is coming poor, you can try increasing the quality. Okay. Yeah, Charan. Components and elements, you can say that they are the same thing. Like paragraph can be called a component of the web page or an element of the web page. It's up to you. Okay. So I hope everyone is clear with how to add headings, how to add paragraphs, and how to add a basic link and what the href attribute does. If everything is clear till now, just type yes in the chat, guys, and then move forward. Yeah, great. Okay, so I think everyone's clear with everything till here. Perfect, sounds good. So let's move forward. Now let's see how we add any basic image to our web page. So for that, the tag is known as the img tag, which I'm sure all of you know is like an acronym for the word image, right? Now, this is one of the exceptions I was talking about when I said that we don't need a closing tag always. So, image is one of the examples of when we do not require a closing tag. Because for image, the only thing you need to do is mention a link, and that image will be there on your web page. So you don't have to close it anywhere specifically. Once the size of the image is over, it will automatically be over. It won't continue, of course, right? So that's why image tag doesn't have any closing tag. That's why if I write a h1 tag here, it automatically closes it, right? But if I type an image tag, it doesn't close that because there is no closing tag for this component. Okay, and then inside this image tag, I will mention the attribute that you have to mention for whichever image you are putting on the screen. It can be a downloaded image also. You would just have to enter the path to the image, or it can be an online image as well. Let me just close the extra tags we have here. Yeah. So now the attribute that we need to give for an image tag is called the SRC attribute, that stands for source. That is what is the source of the image, or what is the link of the image, you can say. Yeah, I think you all will get the recording, and you can talk with the manager of this live session as well for that recording, I think. Okay. So yeah, inside this SRC attribute, we mention what link we want for our image, or the link to whichever image we require. So let me just search web dev again. Let's find any random image from here. Let's say this one looks good. I hope its link isn't very big. And I'll just paste that link here. Okay, it's too much. Let's select a different image. All right. Yeah, better. So now we have mentioned the image tag. Then you need to mention which image you are putting as its link inside the SRC attribute. And now if I run this file and we refresh this, we should be able to see that image here. That's how you add any image to your web page. Now, mostly with the image tag, we give another attribute called as alt. And how this alt works is like an alternate option. Like, what if your browser or wherever you are using this web page, the image is not supported, the image is not able to load, maybe the type is not supported, maybe the size is too much, or maybe there is some error in the image only. So for such cases, to be safe from such cases, to make sure that the user doesn't get a random web page with totally, things here and there because the image wasn't able to load, so in such cases, we can mention this alternate attribute, inside which you will write that what text should appear in case the image is not supported by the browser. So if the image won't be visible, this text will be visible. But if the image loads properly, then you won't see this text at all. But it is still a safe practice to always give this alternate attribute. Okay, SRC is the attribute we give for the image tag. Href is the attribute we give for the anchor tag. All right. Yeah. So inside this alt, I'll just write web dev image in case the image is not supported. So this text will appear in that case. Now, as attributes only, you can even mention what width and height you want for your image. And that also you can mention as attribute. So let's say the width can be 500 and the height can be, let's say, 300. So I can just mention those things here. And now if I run the code, the image will also change its size to the dimensions that I mentioned. Okay, now you can see that it is a bit smaller because of the width and height attributes. So this was about images. Okay, now let me tell you another basic thing that is called a diff tag. Have you all heard of the diff tag? Yeah, guys, have you all heard of the diff tag? Yes, exactly. So let me just tell the ones who maybe don't know about what the diff tag is. So guys, on a web page, there might be a lot of content for you all to see, right? There might be things to scroll even, so the web page might be very long. So in such cases, what we can do is group some specific things together. Instead of giving everything individually, instead of giving like 100 components individually, we can always group the similar elements together. Similar, I mean, is just an example. Of course, it's not necessary to just group the similar elements together. You can even group different elements together if you like, maybe if they are next to each other in such cases. So for that, we can use a diff tag. Now, if you give an empty diff tag, it won't take any space. It will just be a single line. So now if I run this code, let's see whether we get any change. I don't, because the div is not containing anything, right? But I can always put something inside this div, let's say maybe a heading. So now this div will only contain the heading. Rest everything will be, of course, outside the div. Still, there's no change in the output, but at least now our sections are divided. And you can always inspect your web pages as to what components you have. So if you notice for this heading, if I click on it, it is inside a div, right? And now if I look for the div, it is selecting only the first heading. So it is storing the first heading inside it. This div is nothing but a container, which by default has 100% width also, as you can see. Okay. Now let me just put one more element inside this div so that you all can see that now it can even contain two elements. So it can contain as many elements as you want to put in your particular div to specifically group some things together. So div is like a universal tag you can use to group things together. There are specific tags that help you to group maybe only the top section, or maybe only the bottom section, or maybe only the middle section. So there are specific tags for that as well to group those things together. But div is a kind which you can use literally anywhere in a web page to group various kinds of things together. Yeah, very nice indeed. Div is a block level element. Of course, what different kinds of elements we have, that part I'll discuss more in when we are starting with the CSS part. All right. Uh, any questions? No. Yeah. All right. Okay. So this was about the image tag and the div tag finally to group things together. After this, I can also show you how we give any kind of an input tag. Input tag are what? These search sections that you might have, or you might have some buttons, or you might have, let's say, check boxes. There are radio buttons, all those things that you usually see inside a form. Okay, those things are actually known as input tags. So there can be various kinds of inputs where the user might want to type the email or the password or simply text or maybe some number. So all such input types exist. And if you are keeping them inside a particular form, you can always do that you can put all the input types inside a specific form instead of giving it randomly. So for that, what you can do is Charan, div is actually something that groups things together, and section is one tag that we also use. So usually section is used to group similar kinds of things together. Instead of randomly grouping things together, we use sections when we have specific sections in our web page and they are like one are similar to one thing, so we put them inside one section, others may be different, so we put them inside a different section. So both of those things are almost the same, but div is globally used, whereas sections are only used for specific web pages. It isn't necessary to use sections always, but it is always a good practice to keep all of your elements inside these div containers. All right. Yeah. All right. Let's see what's next. So now I will show you all the form type. So whenever you're starting a form in HTML, it's very easy to start it by simply giving the form tag. And of course, form will also have a closing tag because the form needs to end somewhere, right? So now how we give an input type now is by writing simply the input tag. And this input tag also, just like the image tag, doesn't have any closing tag. So we have seen two exceptions till now, which doesn't have any closing tags. One was the image, another one is this input tag. Okay. Yeah, Like if you are mentioning Abhishek the width and height of the image in HTML, by default it is px. If you are doing it in CSS, you need to mention the unit as well. I can write px here, that would mean the same thing. So inside this input now, of course, you can't just leave it here, right? It doesn't mention anything, what kind of an input it is. So if we just run this part, I don't think we will see anything specifically. Yeah, we just see this blank type of text by default. But you can always mention what all things you exactly need, like the type you have to mention using the type attribute. So if I just copy paste this, let's say 4 times, 5 times, one can be, of course, the simple text type of inputs. One can be specifically number types of inputs. Another one might be email. Okay, another one might be password is also another input type. Then there can also be checkbox. Okay. So let me just show you how we see these 5 inputs. So I've given 5 simple inputs till now. Oh, should I increase the size of the text? Sorry. Yeah. These are the input types we are seeing: text, number, email, password, and checkbox. And at the end of the form, either you can use the button tag to simply give a button. Okay. You can write this and simply write submit. Okay. And the button tag will give you a simple button also. Let's see. Yeah. We have the inputs here. Okay, yeah, we have the submit button here as well. This is our checkbox that you can simply click and it will take it if you are clicking on it. Here we can write some simple text. Next one was the number type, right? So you can't write any text here. Here you can use these arrows or your keys to write any form of a number. How email works is, let's say I mention an additional attribute that says that if you want this input type to be submitted. Another type of giving a button, guys, is also an input type of submit. Okay, this will also give you a button. But here, since there is no closing tag, you guys need to mention that what value will be there inside the button. Okay, let me just show you that part. Input type, submit. Okay, so if you just look at the docs here of input type submit, it will say that it defines a submit button which submits all form values. Okay, so whenever you have a form at the end, mostly you will have a submit button as well, of course, right? And that part you can give using this input type of submit. If you want something to be written on the button, you can always write that inside this value attribute, and that will make that text appear on the button. Okay. Let's just see. Yeah, so we have another button now. This one is created using the button tag, and this one is created using the input type. So I would suggest that with forms, use the input type button. If you're adding buttons randomly, you can always use the button tag as well. Mm, yeah. All right. So I see you guys are helping each other out in the chat as well. That's great, guys. If you see that I've maybe lost a question while teaching you all these things, you can always tell me. Okay. How are these things happening on the screen? Maybe the screen is going a bit slow. All right. Let's move forward. Yeah, so we have the two input types now using the buttons. Now I was also showing you how this email works. So password, guys, is very basic. If you write anything in the password, it won't be visible. That's what password does. But email is pretty special. Let me show you how. So sometimes users might try to submit things without writing any inputs, right? And that we never want. If we have some data in a form, we would never want the details to be empty, right? Uh, Sir, how to open and do coding? I will get you, Sharath. Can you give me the figures at how many students? Now you can find those details on our website. Okay, so when you open rebel.it, there will be an option to create new. And inside that, there will be an option of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you want to open rebel.it and code, then you can do it in that way. I hope it's clear now. Yeah. Now coming back to this email type. So what if we never want any value to be submit it without writing anything. Like right now, even if I don't give any inputs and I click on submit, it will get submitted and the page will reload, as you can see. But we never want a form to be submitted unless the user writes something. So for that, you can simply add an attribute called required. And that would make sure that the user has typed something before submitting the particular form. So let me just write required for all of these. Yeah, perfect. Now let me run this code and just refresh again. Yeah, now if I try submitting it, it will give me a notification that please fill out this field. Okay, and that's pretty great because we never want our inputs to be submitted in an empty manner. So let me just write my name here. Here there is some number. Let's select any random number. Now what if I just write something here? And as you can see, this is not at all an email, right? An email always had that @ symbol and some website at the end. Password can be anything, of course. If I try to submit it now, what do you think? Will it get submitted? How many of you think it will be submitted and the page will reload? Anyone who thinks it will get submitted even though I haven't given a proper email address, but I have given values for everything? Not submitted. No, it will not, as mail tag is required. Okay, let's see, guys. If I click on submit, it will give me a notification that please include an @ in the symbol because we gave the input type as email. If you would have given text, it would have been submitted, right? Yeah, it didn't get submitted. But if I include just an @ sign and maybe gmail.com at the end as well, now it will get submitted because everything is properly filled. Okay, perfect. Now, of course, the inputs won't be visible like this, right? There's nothing to describe what the inputs are for. Okay, so that part also you can mention, like what you need to type inside these inputs. Either you can do that by giving it a placeholder attribute. So let's say the first one is text, let me write full name. And now if I run the code, our HTML file will give a suggestion to the user as to what they have to write here in the input type. And as soon as I start writing, it will go because that's not exactly text, that's just a suggestion, guys. Okay, it's not written there, it's just a suggestion. You can also mention labels instead of this. So I can mention a label here and sorry, yeah, label, and then simply write, let's say, full name. So now how this label will come is it will describe this particular input type. And that text will come, of course, before this input type. So now we can either mention that as text or we can mention that as a placeholder as well. Now, if I currently click on this label, nothing is happening, of course, right? So you can also do one thing where you can connect this label with this input type. For that, what you need to do is, first of all, give a for attribute to the label. Let's say it is name. And you now have to give the same value to the ID attribute in the input type. And that will help you to connect this label with the input by giving the for attribute to the label tag and then by giving the ID attribute to the name tag. That's how you connect the label with an input type. Okay, let me just run this code. Now I think it's reloaded. Now if I click on just this label, you will see that the input type gets automatically selected. For those who didn't see, I'll just show you once more. So if we click on this label now, automatically the input type will get selected. That's how it helps us to connect the input type with the labels. All right. We can add placeholder. Yeah, is the type mobile valid for 10-digit mobile number. Those things you can try and mention specifically, of course. Okay, you just have to Google how to get an input that only limits the user to 10 digits. Okay, and you can see that. Okay, guys, so this was about a basic form about various kinds of inputs, the submit button, the label that can describe what has to be written inside the input. The placeholder attribute helps you to give a suggestion to the user as to what they have to write inside the input type. And then the required attribute, without giving it any value, will just make sure that the user writes at least something in the input tag before submitting the particular form. Okay. Yeah. Any doubts till now? Is the form part clear to everyone? Just type yes in the chat and then move forward. Perfect. All right. So I think it's clear to everyone. Great. Okay, guys. So I think we have covered many things in HTML: the text part, the image part, the links part, and also the inputs now. And let's see our YouTube section now. So this is also nothing but buttons and images. This is an input type. This is a button. This is a button. Then we have a video here. So how this video is included, that part I'll tell you while we are making the project. Everything else is just images, some buttons. Then there is an input type here as well, and then we also have some comments, and then there is nothing new here, right? All the things that you can see here can be created using one of the HTML components that we have seen here. So now I can start with the HTML part of the YouTube clone. So how to make a Google form in different line? Oh yeah, guys. If you want to change a line, if you want to add a line break in the middle of something, you can always add a BR tag for that. You can add a BR tag for line breaks. And if you also add an HR tag, that will give you a small thin line dividing your content. So let me just show you how the BR works. Yeah. So as you can see, after full name, the line changed. Then we have the input. Then we have a line break again. But this line, thin line that we're seeing in the middle, this is our HR tag. So these are some of the basic tags you can use to maybe give line breaks or give divisions in the middle. Yeah, BR tag is used for automatically shifting the content after that BR tag to the next line. And HR tag is used to give this thin line that you can see right after this input and before this number input. Okay. We can use div as well for that. For changing the lines, if you are just going inside another div, that will also automatically change the line. Yes. All right, guys. So I think I can begin with our project, right? Can I begin with the YouTube part, the HTML part of a YouTube clone? No, no closing, Rajesh, for PR and HR tags. Yeah. So guys, can I begin with the HTML part of the YouTube clone? Do you think you all are comfortable with the basic elements inside an HTML file? Perfect. BR give the spacing between the line, however div does not give the spacing between two lines. Like if you put one line inside one div and then the next line inside another div, there will be a line break by default. Perfect. All right, guys. So let me start. I'll just remove, let's say, everything in the body section for now because we need the head section, right? I'll remove these forms and everything. We don't need them. And inside the title, let me just change this to clone. YouTube clone. All right. Inside the body. Now, first of all, I'll also add a meta tag here. Okay, I'll add two meta tags here in the head section. This first meta tag is just a character set. Okay, it will also describe this. Wait, let me show you. Yeah, this attribute declares the page's character encoding. This is just some basic character encoding for English letters we have. You can directly copy paste it. You don't have to understand its specifics. And there is one more meta tag that I'll add in the description section, which actually helps us to keep our web page responsive. What I mean by responsive pages is sometimes you might have some content, but when you decrease the screen size, everything goes bad. It doesn't get aligned properly. On the phone, it might look very different and maybe worse than how it is looking on your browser. So if your browser is able to support small screen sizes as well, I mean, if your web page is able to support small screen sizes as well and it gets automatically aligned in such cases, that means that your web page is responsive. Okay, and this is, as you can see, this web page is one of them, because if I keep the size of the screen very small, it will automatically keep the video at the top, then keep this, and then keep the videos at the bottom. But if I increase the screen size, automatically all the videos will come towards the right. So this is what a responsive web page acts like. So, like, you have given a label for full name. Can we write a label for each? Yeah, of course, Ishita. That's we need to give labels for almost all the input types that we might keep inside a formal form. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How can we get certificate? That part will be given to you. Don't worry. This is the composition of opening tag, this attribute. Okay. Can you copy the meta line in chat? I mean, yeah, I haven't opened it on my laptop, YouTube link, but yeah, I can do that. Don't worry. Let me do that once. I'll just send you guys the meta tag in the chat, guys. Give me a sec. Okay. Yeah, one sec. Okay. Here are the meta tags. Okay, guys, I'll send you all the meta tags in case for those who are coding along with me, they can follow these things from there. All right. Otherwise, I think at the end you will be conveyed the code as well. I can create a Git repo and get it shared if you all like. All right. So that part also we can do. So you can copy paste at that point. But if you just search for HTML and in the basics only, it will show you to add these meta tags, because the second meta tag that we have here, this viewport one, that's actually for some default responsiveness that HTML provides us. So if we decrease the screen size, it will automatically adjust the things it can. Of course, it won't know to keep these videos on the bottom if the screen size is too less, but at least on some small point, it does something automatically as well. Hence, we add this meta tag. Okay. Also, when you are using frameworks like Bootstrap and all, they would require this meta tag in your head section. So make sure in every HTML file you guys add this. Yeah, the source code can be provided. Link for images. There will be downloaded images here, but those downloaded images, let me just show you all the images we are using. So those are mostly for this YouTube part. So this is like the images already have that small size that we have here. Okay, that's why it is coming blur for the greater screen size. So this is some account info, then this is the video info, then these are all the like, dislike, share, add something, option icon in one image, then there is one image for the profile icon and the name and the date. There is a dislike, there is a like, there is a profile icon, there is sort. Okay, the photo that we see on top of many menu buttons, this is that. Okay, initial scale as in the starting scale, Akash. uh, yeah, and then we have this subscribed image as well with the bell icon that we have on YouTube. Then we also have more images, bell, grid. Then we have this menu image again. We have the profile image again, search image, upload image, and the YT logo, of course. Now the size here is very small. That's why it is looking blur here. But don't worry, when we put it with this size, it will be specifically visible. All right, that won't be a problem then. That's it. Yeah. So let's start. Let me go back to my HTML file, close this images folder. Yeah, I'll just zoom in. I hope it's visible now. All right. So let's begin with our project. So inside our body section, the first thing I'm going to add is, of course, the main div that will store almost everything inside it. That's what the first div is going to do. It is going to store everything inside it, and let's call this div a wrapper. So now, guys, what happens is in CSS, The use of CSS is to select specific components, select maybe the entire body, select maybe the entire HTML file, or maybe select just the div, or maybe select just the paragraph. So you can select all the things that you can find on your HTML web page and edit them using CSS. But of course, when you are using CSS, you will need to select these elements, right? So to select them, of course, you can't write div, because if you write div, there might be like 20 divs in your project and you want to select just one of them. So we can't write just the div as a selector in CSS. So to specify such things on how we can select a specific element in CSS using HTML is by giving it a class attribute. Okay, so whatever value you give to this class attribute, that's up to you. You can give it any value, and that name you will be able to use in CSS also. And then you can select it and edit it in any manner. If you just see the description of this class attribute, it also mentions that a space separated list of the classes of the element. Classes allow CSS and JavaScript to select and access specific elements via the class selectors or functions. So JavaScript part you can ignore, but the important part here is classes allow CSS to select and access specific elements. All right, so that's why we are going to add to almost all of our elements a specific class, so that later on we can select it and using CSS we can edit it. All right. Yeah, we don't change the initial scale. That's actually a default value that you can see there. So 0 is like the default zoom that's there on any web page. That's what it is mentioning there by initial scale. Rajesh, div just helps you to group things together in your web page. Okay, whenever you want to put some particular things in one container and put other things in another container, you can use divs for that. Ishita, meta chart set will help you to mention what kind of alphabets will be used. So it's just a basic encoding of all the characters, basic English characters that we have in every browser phone. So for them to be read properly, this chart set is added. You'll find this line directly, you just have to copy paste it. You would never have to like type this part yourself or memorize this part. With every HTML backbone or HTML, let's say, template that might have the basic tags, you'll always find these meta tags there as well. Even if you don't mention the chart set part, it will be fine. Okay, this attribute declares the page character encoding. Authors are encouraged to use UTF-8, but of course it's not necessary. But for the compatibility of different browsers, you might be using some browsers other than Chrome, so it will be compatible if you are using this. Viewport is, like I said, for the responsive part. Class names, guys, I'll be giving randomly, and you can give whatever class names you like. Just make sure when you are using it in CSS, you use the same name. Okay. Inline tags, Rajesh, are mostly our text tags. Okay, divs and these buttons and all of them are mostly block types. Yeah. It can be anything actually. Don't worry about the class names, guys. That I'm going to give randomly. You can use the same class names as mine, or you can give your own. That's always up to you. Class names is not restricted to anything. If you give here space and then you, let's say, give it another class, that would mean that the same div has two classes. One is wrapper, one is class. If you want to connect both the things, just like give a space, give an underscore, give anything to connect them. But if you want two classes or multiple classes for just one particular element, then just give a space between two words, and that would mean that it has now two classes, wrapper and class 2. Let me just remove the second one. Yeah. Is it possible to share images on YouTube chat? I don't think so. Is it? Rajesh, it's all about practice and front end, right? So as much as you practice, it's best for you. Yeah, exactly. There is no option to share the images like this, but of course we can provide some drive link or something later on. Yeah, so guys, coming to the project, we have 2 hours remaining. Let's try to finish the project on time because it's not a very small project. Of course, some CSS basic properties I'll be adding very quickly, but most of the things I'll be mentioning one by one. Yeah, we can also have, instead of this class, guys, like if you want your CSS to select multiple elements together, like let's say you have 10 divs, but you want to select 3 of them. So you can give all 3 of them the same class, and then if you apply any kind of a CSS property on that particular class, it will get applied to all three. But if you want to select specifically one div, you can always give it an ID as well, because IDs are specifically for selecting an element individually or uniquely, whereas classes you can use to select multiple elements together. Okay, I hope the difference between class and ID is clear. Ishita, wrapper is just a class name as of now. All right. Next, we have, let's say, we have three sections in our total file. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll divide this top section that is always fixed, whereas the bottom one is not, right? As you can see, if I scroll down, this part doesn't get scrolled down, the top YouTube part. So that's why I will put it in a different section than everything below it. So what is the top section usually called in various files, guys? Can you mention that name? What do we call the top area of a particular file? Anyone? Nav bar, you can say that. Yeah. What else? No, no, no. It's not an inbuilt class, Rajesh. We are not using any CSS framework, right? So that's why there will be no inbuilt classes. Yeah, panel navbar. So in HTML, to divide the top section maybe from the other sections of the web page, you can always use a tag called the header tag. And inside this header tag, you can keep all the things at the top of your place. Okay, whichever things are at the top. So now inside this header section, I will keep all of these things. There are a lot of things here. There is one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, almost seven images, one input type. So there are a lot of things. So we'll be grouping them together as well. Like maybe group these two together, then maybe group these two together, and then maybe group these four together. Like that, we'll be doing groupings all the time. We'll be storing them in different containers, but most of the tags you will see will be familiar. I'll be going through it not very slowly, to be honest, because otherwise we won't be able to finish it. But still, okay, I'll keep on explaining everything. You don't have to worry about why we are putting something in a container. Okay, that's very basic. Those things you do as per your approval or your requirement. Those things are never fixed. So that's how I'll be proceeding with it as well. You can always use a different method if you like. So inside this header section, let's start a div. Okay, for grouping small things as well, we will use divs only. Only for this top part, I'm using a header specifically. So inside this div, let me just give it a class of, let's say, header logo we have at the top, right? So let's say header logo, I can give this name. And then let me just close this div. And inside this div, what I'll do is I'll have these images. I showed you these images, right? This menu and the YouTube link. Now, if you see, my mouse currently is a normal kind of thing. But if I go on top of this, it's now a pointer mouse. Okay, it's different. You can select this and it refreshes if you like. Select, click on it, it's like a link. That's why the cursor is changing also. Yeah, guys, I hope I'm audible now. I'm sorry, there was a power cut, so I had to switch on the hotspot. Yeah, guys, I'm audible. Perfect. All right. Sorry, guys, there was a power cut. I'll just keep the camera off for a while till the light is back because I'm on mobile data as of now, and with screen sharing and everything, it might not go well. Okay. So let's continue. So we have this. Uh, Let me refresh this. We don't need these outputs now. Yeah. So like I was showing showing you these are not just images. Like on images, you are not able to click, okay? But these icons here are clickable. That's because those images are inside a link. So always you can have a link, and inside it you can mention whatever you like. And if you're mentioning an image, that image can act as a link. If you're mentioning a button, that button can act as a link. Okay, don't worry about the class names, guys. I'm telling again, that part you give yourself to later on select it using CSS. Okay, so you can give different names if you like. That's not a problem. Yeah, guys, my voice might be lagging a little bit, but for some people it's fine. So I'll just continue a bit slower till the Wi-Fi is back. So yeah, I was saying inside this header logo, when we add these two icons now that we have on the top, these icons will be inside an anchor tag to make these images act like links. Of course, you can give the YouTube link if we click on here so that you reach the homepage of YouTube. But those things are additional things. We are mainly focusing on how the website looks, not how responsive it is. HTML and CSS do not create responsive web pages. So I'll be focusing on the static part only of how this everything is looking. Okay, all right. So now inside this div class of logo, the first thing I'm going to add is an anchor tag. I'll give it an href. If you don't want your link to reach anywhere, you can always give a hashtag in the middle, or you can also keep it empty. That would mean the same. Okay, so I'll just close this anchor tag, and inside this anchor tag, I'll add the image that I have for the YouTube and that menu logo. Okay, so inside this image, I need to get that hamburger image. This is the hamburger icon, you can say. So now, as you can see, we have an images folder here, and we have a header folder there. And inside that header folder, I have this hamburger.png. So I can't write its name here directly. If I'm in this folder right now with the index.html file, I need to go through the entire path till that image comes. Okay, so how I will mention that path is, first of all, write the first folder, which is images. And then usually when you are writing any path in any language other than HTML, you mention this current path using dot slash. But in HTML, the current path doesn't have to be mentioned. But if you're going to some other folder, you need to mention that. So I need to go to the images folder. Then I need to go inside the header folder. And finally, I need to select the image of hamburger.png. And then I can just close this image tag. Okay, now if I run this, source src equal to images slash header slash hamburger dot png. Right. These are not online images, Boyni, actually. These are images that I already have. So we can always create a drive link and then share the images with you all. I'll do that in the middle if required. Okay. Let me refresh this. Yeah, now we have that hamburger icon that we have here as well. Okay, so I've added the image properly, as you can see. Okay, let's move forward. So after this particular link, in a similar way, inside an anchor tag, I'm going to add another image. Okay, another image, which is this YouTube image. Now, the only difference here is the image is different, but the anchor tag will be the same. Of course, the image tag will also be the same. Okay, voice break, voice break. 1 second, guys. Let me just refresh my connection. Am I audible now? Yeah, I'll just zoom in. The position part, Jerome, we'll be doing using CSS. So once we start at that point, I'll explain it. Don't worry. So now, guys, inside this head section, I'll add that YouTube logo in the exact same way like we did the other logo. So that is again an anchor tag, and then finally the YouTube image, which is also inside the header section, and that I've added here. There is an alt also, and there is a class for the YouTube as well. Okay, I'll just add an alt and a class attribute to the hamburger logo as well. So let me just do that. Yeah, better. Okay. If I run this code now, we should be able to see that hamburger image as well as the YouTube logo image right next to the previous icon that we had. Let me refresh. It will not load. Okay, maybe oh, this hasn't run yet. Okay, then I'll just move forward in the meantime, just loading with everything and mobile data. I think it's working a bit slow. Just bear with me for a few more minutes. I'm sure the power will be back. Yeah, yeah, guys, I'm audible now. Is it the voice? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just send you all the images. I'll upload them on Google. I will send you all the anyone would like to copy this, they can. So you can just upload them on Google Drive and hope for the internet connection to get as well. Yeah, one sec. Yeah, guys. So actually, I'll just wait to upload the images once the Wi-Fi is back. Otherwise, it will be too slow as of now with everything going on. We can move forward. Am I audible? No, no, guys. The session is not over. There's just some network issue. Actually, there are small power cuts in the middle for 15-20 minutes. Because of that, the Wi-Fi gives some issues. That's why I stopped my camera as well. Sorry about that, guys. We'll continue with the code part till I can get back with all the things. And if there are some cuts in the middle, don't worry. We are not stopping before 6 p.m. Okay, that's for sure. It might take a little bit to just finish the project, but it won't stop before that. Okay. Yeah. Echo sound. Okay, guys, please manage. I hope you all can understand. I'll just mention the next thing. So till now, we added a main div that is going to store everything inside it. Then we have the header section for including the top parts inside that header section. And then we started another div for storing the logo, first of all, and the YouTube icon. So these two things we're storing in one particular div, as you can see here in the output as well. Okay. So here on the top left, we have the two icons that we have added. All right. Now, after this particular div, I can go outside this div because inside this div we only need these two icons. After this, I will start another div that will have the input types and search icon. Okay, so this div will be for this search section, this image and the input type. Okay, so here I will write another div, give it the class of, let's say, search, because this will be including search paths. So search, and then I'll close this div. And in between this div, I need to give one input type and this icon. Okay, these are the two things I'll be given inside this div. Okay, so for that, I will start a form. And after starting a form, the first thing I'll add there is, of course, an input type of text. And I'll also give it a specific ID and a placeholder. This voice is not clear. Okay, let me close the additional links. Am I audible now? Okay, okay. So, all right. So I think I'm audible to some of them. In the middle, there might be some breaks. Okay, in that case, just bear with it for a while. All right. So now I've just added a form inside a new div, and inside that form, I will keep this input type of text and this button for searching for it. Okay, so first of all, I've started an input type of text, and after that, I will just add that image again inside of an anchor tag. So this here, the search icon is also an image, right? Yeah, in the last 5 minutes, all we have done is we have gotten out of our previous div and started another div for the search section. Inside this search section, we will have this input type and this particular button. Okay, so I've added the input type here, and that image, just like the other images, I will add inside the anchor tag. Okay, so we have the link here and we have another image inside it, which is the search section. Okay, so I'll run this, I'll refresh it, and we should be able to see those two things there on the top. That's the next part. All right. Now, after this form, I'll go outside this div as well, because now the search section part is over also. We can see the search part here, and let's make sure the button is visible as well. We run this. Yeah. So now guys, you can see all the 4 images that we have added till now. Sorry, 3 images. One is the input type. So we had this one div. As soon as we change the div, automatically you all can see a line change as well, right? Yeah, the search bar in the form tag, because it is an input type. That's why. All right. So guys, after this form, I can come outside the div that had all these search options. And after that search options, I will start the header icons and the header logo. So what all 4 things I'm adding? This image, this upload image, the bell image, and the profile image. Those are the next things. So I will add them again, guys, in the same way we have been adding the other image. Inside a link, we have to add those images, and that's all we need to do, right? So I'll just show you the code for that. So here we have a div with all the header icons and the header logo. Inside the link, we have the grid image, the upload image, the bell icon, and the profile icon. So these are the four images that you can see here on the top right. So the placement part, the CSS part, will be done in a while. Here, the HTML part, we should be now able to see the four images. So let me just run this tag quickly. Let's refresh. Yeah, so now you all can see the grid images there, the upload icon, the bell icon, and the profile. All these four images are visible as well, right? So now guys, our header section is over. Okay, now our header section is over because we have added in the header section all these things that we can see on the top, right? So now we can come outside this header section. One sec, Ritu. Yeah, the use of class is just to refer to a component using CSS, because later on we need to select these things and edit them, right? So for that part you will need to select that component. So that will be done using its class. And alt attribute is the one that will be shown if the image is not accessible by the browser or not supported by the browser. In that case, you will see the text inside the alt attribute. Okay, I hope it's clear now. All right, guys. So after this head section, I will come next. I will go forward and I will start with the main wrapper. Okay, the main wrapper that is going to store most of these things here. So now let's start that main wrapper after this head section, but we are still inside the main div that we had in the beginning. So I'm not going outside that div, but since the top part is over, I'm going outside the header section. Kiran, just once the Wi-Fi is back, I'll quickly use Drive, upload those images, and send you all. Okay. For now, you guys can follow along with this. Give the image names if you are coding along with me. So if you give the image names, and once you get the images, you will be able to use them as well. So now after the header section, I will start another div. Let's give it the class of, let's say, main wrapper. It will be storing everything in the middle, which is a video and those things which are important. So I'll just give it the name of main wrapper, and I'll close this div and go inside it. Now inside this main wrapper, let me give an empty div for a simple line break between this border and this video. There is some space, right? So that space you can give using CSS, of course, but for now, just to give some basic space between them, I'll give an empty div here. Let this div stay towards the left and let this div for now stay empty only. Okay, after this div, like we have the header section now for the top things, we have a main tag for everything in the middle of our file. For that, we can use a tag called the main tag. Okay, and inside this main tag, I will start my div, which will have our video and its description. And what else do we have? We have the views, we have some images, right? So there will be one div storing everything about the video and the video. And then there will be another div that will specifically store only the video, and then one div will specifically store only the description. So we'll be grouping everything very clearly. There will be one bigger div, and inside that there will mostly be smaller divs. Okay. That class left, you can later on select and give some extra space if required. That's why I've just mentioned there a random class. You can give a one letter name as well. Okay, that's also fine. Yeah, we can use BR as well. Div just gives you like a block space. So that's what I needed here in case we needed to add anything else. Okay. Okay. So inside this main tag now, guys, I will start a main container for the div. One sec. Yeah, let's continue. So inside this main tag, first of all, we'll have a div that is going to store everything about the video, its description, the video itself, the image of the icons, the description, everything. So let's start a div for that, which is our main video container. So div, let's say class can be main video, and then I can just close this div inside it and start with our video part. So inside this main div, there are a lot of things. Okay, we have the video, we have its description, the views, everything. Now we can also specifically put each of these parts in different divs. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to have one div now for just the video. So let's say div class equal to, I can give it, let's say main video container. And I can close this. Inside this, we will only have our video. Okay, so guys, whenever you want to show another web page, yeah, Ishita, like we'll be getting the forms again and again. Okay, we'll be getting such input types later on as well. So I'll mention it once at that point also. Okay, don't worry. Inside this main video container, guys, what we'll do is we will have something called an iframe tag inside it. When this iframe tag is used is whenever you want to show another web page inside a specific web page. Okay, so whenever you want to put a video, a screen, any other web pages info on your web page using the entire web page, you can use the tag called the iframe tag. Okay, and inside this iframe, you can give it some width. Let's say it can be 560 for now. Height can be, let's say, 315. These are some basic sizes of a video, how it appears on YouTube. That's why I'm giving the size. Of course, later on, we can stretch that size, change its size using CSS, or do any other effects if we like. So the height can be, let's say, 315. Now, inside this iframe tag, what I'll do is I'll give it a source attribute just like an image attribute. Okay, so I'll give a source attribute, and inside it you can put the link of whichever web page you want to connect this web page with inside the iframe src attribute. So I'll just put the link of this particular video here, and then other than this, I will give it some attributes which actually allow all the YouTube features that you might have. Okay, so these are just some of them. Let me close this iframe. Yeah. Inside this, I've just given it some attributes like allow accelerometer, autoplay, encrypted media, picture in picture. All of these are nothing but these YouTube features that you see now, where you can change the video to where it goes, then you can change the settings. All of these things are visible because of these additional attributes that I've added, like accelerometer, autoplay, encrypted media, gyroscope, picture in picture, all of these. Yeah, the size of those YouTube logo and everything is the same as this. Okay, I made sure the images are that way. If I zoom out, you'll see that the size is the same. So you don't have to worry about the images. We'll mostly worry about its positioning only. Okay, let's run this with slow net. It might take a lot of time to load this iframe, but still, I think we should be able to see it. Yeah, as you all can see, now we have the video in the output as well. This error might be coming because of the net, but other than that, whenever you want to show one web page inside another, you can use the iframe tag for that. Okay, sec. Yeah, let's just refresh once more. Yeah, now we can guys see the video that we have here also in our own web page using the iframe tag. Okay. Has everyone understood how to add another web page or link on the page using iframe? Specify in the part on the screen to be visible like this. Possible that we never take suggestion videos and put it inside the frame. For that, you will have to use JavaScript. Actually. That when the user clicks on it, has to be shown. Right? That's like a responsive nature. Yeah. So guys, after this main video, what we'll do is have a description. What is the description part? This chef query and this the name of the video and the views. All of these things will be uh, clear in the description part of this page. Okay. Am I still not audible? Is it clear? Okay, okay. So guys, yeah, we'll just wait for 2 minutes. Okay, wait 2 minutes. I'll just call them and understand what's going on. Take a 2 minute break. We'll continue the project in just 2 minutes. Okay, so sorry about this. Just give me 2 minutes. Yeah, yeah, guys. Just give me a minute. I'll try to figure what's going wrong. Okay. Yeah, guys, are you able to hear me as of now? Am I audible? I just talked to the person. I think it will be just a few more minutes till I get Wi-Fi. Am I audible for now on? All right, perfect. So, guys, we were at the point where we added the iframe connecting our other YouTube video inside our web page right now. Okay, I'm still on the same network connection, so in case in the middle it gets worse, please bear with it. I'm sure it will be back any minute now. Yeah. So inside this iframe now, what I'll do after that is add the description. Okay, so this was the div for only the video. This div right next to it that's closing is for everything about the video. It's description as well. So I'll go inside this, so I'll go outside this div, but I'll still stay inside this main video div. Okay, I'm glad that I'm audible now. All right. So now inside this div, I will just start the description div. So this div will have, let's say, a class of uh, main sub description. You can say it is like the description of the video. So that's what the class I'll give here. So main sub description. And then I'll just close this div. And after that, again in the same way, I will add the two links first. Okay, what two links? The subscribed link and the name link. Let me show you how we do that in the same way. How have we have been adding the other images by adding the image tag inside the anchor tag. Okay. So we started, yeah, I'll just repeat everyone. We started after this header, our main wrapper, that is the middle section of our project. Then inside the main component, like we have header for the top part, we have the main tag for the middle part of your web pages. You can use that even if you don't, that's fine. Then we had a div that is going to store then we have this div, the main video class div, which is going to store this iframe, as well as the name, the views, this image, all of these things will be stored inside this main div. So inside that main video div, we have one div for the video container, then we have one div for the description part. Okay, after that, we can also have the name of the video in a paragraph tag. But let's just see how those two icons are appearing. If we refresh this, yeah. So now you can see the subscribed icon, the bell icon, as well as the ESPN part. After this, I will simply add a paragraph tag that is the name of the video actually. So inside the same div, since this div is for the description part, that's why I'll stay inside the same div and then I'll just add this paragraph tag with the name of the video. Okay, so this is pretty easy, right? This is just the name. I've just added a simple paragraph text. After that, I can go outside the descriptive div and I can start the div for the show more option. I think you'll be, yeah, this show more option that you are seeing now. Now I'm coming to that. So after this div, I'll just start a div again, class of main, but this is the extra part. So I'll just write main more. And then I'll close this div. And inside this div now, I will simply have a link that will say show more, which was that link we were seeing there. So I've added a link and I've added a paragraph tag. Okay, so that we can have that show more part as a link instead of plain text. Pretty easy, yes? All right. So now I can go outside this A and the other div as well because the description part is now over. And now we can move forward to the other parts like what's up next, the autoplay part. All of these, yeah, autoplay up next. These are the things we are going to be covering next. So as you all can see, this left section of our web page looks like one part, and on the right is a totally different part about the other videos. So we can divide this right part also by using something other than divs. Okay, and what we can use here is we can use a tag called the aside tag, and this aside tag helps you to mention some content that might be totally not related to the things around it, but it might be something different. For such different things, you can always use a tag called the aside tag. Okay? And inside this aside tag, first of all, let me just give it a class of aside. Inside of this, we'll be doing this right section, guys. Okay, the up next, the autoplay, these links to the same video, I know, but still different links, and finally some button sorts of thing. All right, great. So now inside this aside part, what I'm going to do first is start a div that will have some text of up next. Okay, this up next is just text. It's not a link, as you all can see, but this autoplay is a link. Okay, so we'll keep up next as a simple paragraph tag, but this autoplay part we will keep inside an anchor tag. Understood? Any doubts till now, guys? Anything you didn't get? Sorry for the breaks in the middle, but yeah. All right, perfect. Yeah, Jairam, what do you have a doubt with? Please ask. Okay, guys. So after this div, we have a paragraph tag here that says up next, which is this text. We'll place it later on. And then we have this autoplay link, right? After this, I will start another anchor tag. And now all the anchor tags will have nothing but just a class. Okay, like one is different. As you can see, one of these links is different. After that, we have some division, but then after that, all are the same, right? So I'll add the first one by simply let's maybe give it a class of first image, because this is different than the others. So I'll go outside this div and I'll create a link and put the image inside that link. And inside that, we'll have an image with some alternate text, of course, which will be this particular image. Okay. href Jerem is just an attribute that helps you to give a link as to where the link is going. If you keep it as blank, it won't go anywhere. If you keep it as hashtag, it will still not go anywhere. So if you don't want your link to reach any particular place, any particular website, you can keep hashtag inside it. In left, up, or down, Prabir, usually we place those things using the position elements, right? If you would have heard of them, there are positioning things in CSS that we will come on to very soon. Okay. Yeah. So guys, after this first link, all of the other links are exactly the same, right? So what I'll do is I'll just take all the other links and paste them here. So these are just the links which are showing these same videos and the same image, right? Just like this one. That part I'm adding, nothing else. So that part is just the same links again and again. So all of them have the same class, they have the same image, and they have the same alternate text as well. But it will at least give us many more images now. Let's just refresh. Yeah, Sanskar, you'll definitely get the source code as well. Okay, so now as you all can see, we have the show more link, we have the up next text, we have the autoplay link, and then we have all these images, which will be later on aligned like this. Okay, after this, in the aside section, we just have this one show more link sorts of thing. You can create a, okay, it is not a button, it is a link only. So we will create a link for this show more, and then later on edit it so that it looks like this. All right, so let's come to that part. where I'm going to add this show more section. And it's nothing. How we are going to add it is by just adding an anchor tag with the text of show more inside a div, so that later on to that div we can edit it in a way so that it looks like this using CSS. Okay, yeah, positioning will be done, Rajesh. As soon as we are done with the HTML part, it isn't remaining much now. Only the comments need to be added, and all the comments are the same. So we'll just do one and then copy paste the others. All right. So here I will now add that div with the show more link. Show more link. I'll just show you all once more. This is the show more link that we are adding. The div we will edit later on to make it look like this, and in the middle we have the link that takes us to the same web page again. Okay, I hope there aren't any doubts. Yeah, so we have the show more part now as well, and after the show more part our aside section is over, because like I told you, the side section will be given like this on the right. So once it is over, we can go outside this aside section. Okay, and after this section, now I can to divide all the comments in one group inside this main section that we are already inside of. I'll divide all those comments inside the section tag. So you can use the section tag as well to group similar things together. And since all the comments are almost the same, I'm going to use a section tag to group them together. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. One sec, guys. Yeah. So we were inside now the section tab. Perfect. Now here I can start a div first of all. What will that div contain? All these comments. We have already done till show more, like I showed you. Okay. After this show more, I'll just add these comments. Yeah, images, I'll just send computer easy cool tutorials. Don't worry. Uh, should I send the images right now, guys? Can you all wait for a minute? I can send the images. I mean, the link to the drive for the images. Should I do that and take a minute break from the code? Or should I continue and give the images later on? Just mention in the chat however way you want to proceed in. Okay, should I continue? All right, all right. All right, I'll continue then. No problem. I'll send you the images later on. Okay, guys. So inside this section, first of all, we'll have a main div that is going to store the icons. Okay, this is a photo, this is an icon, right? There are this comments text is there. So all of these things will be inside one particular section. So for that section, I will just create a div here. And then inside that div, what I'll do is create a div with the class of, first of all, the comments, then another div with the image, that icon, and the sort by text. And another image that we have there is the profile icon, right? So these are some of the things that I'm going to add first. So here we have the 6806 comments, this part, the comments, then we have sort by, then we have the profile icon. Okay, these are the three things that I've just added. Let me show it to you all. Yeah, here you can see now the show more part, the comments, the phone, and the sort by part, right? All right. Next, what we'll do is add the form type again. Somebody did ask in the middle to just repeat the form part. So I'm going to repeat that. So whenever we have any input types, like maybe text or any other type, we should always keep them inside the form tags. Okay, so that later on you can group all the inputs together, or you can edit them in a specific way. So for forms, for these inputs, instead of using divs, we'll use the form tag inside that div to keep all the input types together. So I will keep a div here with the class of, let's say, input container. And then inside the form, I'll just have a simple input type of text. Okay, that's what I've done now. So now we have the form. And if I refresh, we'll be able to see that as well. Yeah. Now we have that add a public comment input type here. We have the profile icon, we have the sort by link, and we have that menu icon as well. So going good. Once I finish HTML, Sandeep, I'll repeat everything. Okay, we'll revise HTML once. Yeah, Sandeep, that's what I said. Okay, so inside, after this div, we can close this other div as well and come outside of this area with the section comments, because we have added all the icons that were required there. Okay, after that, we need to come to specifically the comments part, where we again have this icon. We have the like and dislike button. We have the reply link. Then we also have this 10 months ago text, then a random comment, which is apparently the same for all the comments. Of course, in your project, if you want, you can change the names, you can add images in these icons, you can keep different numbers for these images, use different like dislikes. Okay, that's up to you. So now after this div, I will just start another div, but I'll stay inside the same section, of course. So let's have one main div for all the comments and then specific divs for each individual comment. So I'll add another div here and let's give it a class of comments. And then let's just close this div. All right. So coming inside this comments div, let's see what we have here first. First thing is this profile icon. Next thing is the name of the person. After that, we simply have another link. So this name is apparently just text, guys, if you all notice, right? But this 10 months ago part is apparently a link. So we'll add a simple paragraph tag with this Jon Snow, and in the middle, we will add an anchor tag to convert the next text into a link. Okay, that's how we are going to proceed. So now let me just add that particular div here. So for the comments, we first have the image, then we have the paragraph and the link for the name and the 10 months ago part. Then we have the actual comment. So that will again be plain text. So I will just use a paragraph tag for that. So we have the image, then we have the two paragraph tags, and in the second paragraph tag you can find this link as well, so that 10 months ago looks like a link. Let me just show you the output. Yeah, so as you can all now see, we have this icon, add a comment, then we have another icon, Jon Snow 10 months ago, and the comment. Right, everything's going good? Any doubts, guys? All clear, guys, till now? Just respond in the chat. The power's back, the Wi-Fi is running good. All right, sounds great. So now, as you all can see, we have some more things to add here, which is just this link, this image of like, the image of dislike, the reply button, and the view all 7 replies link. After that, everything is the same, only the names are changing. So let me show you these two things, and then you all can also copy paste that part to add the rest of the comments. All right. So let's have that div class of likes now. We have to add those likes and dislikes icons, right? So now I will just start another div after this paragraph tag that will, let's say, have a class of likes. Close this, close the div tag as well. And that's what I did shifty right now. Yeah, some humor is always good in the middle of the workshop, guys, but please focus on the next part now. So we have the likes. Again, we have different images for like, we have a different image for dislike, and then we have a simple link with the reply part. So these are the three things I'm going to add. Just notice here. First, we have a link inside which we have the image, right? Next, we have the paragraph that had that 1K, and then we have the dislike image, and then we have the reply link. So have we added all the four things? Yeah, we have. This also we have added, 1K also we have added, dislike also we have added, and the reply link we have also added. The part remaining now is the anchor tag for view all 7 replies that we had there, which is the last thing inside this comments diff. I'll just add that anchor tag, make sure we have everything we need inside a single comment. Yeah. So now we have all the things we require for one particular comment. We have all the images, we have the text, and we have the reply, and we have the links. Sounds good? So now, just in the same way, I'll go outside this div and then paste all the other comments that we have, because all of them are exactly the same. All right, give me a sec. I'll just paste those things here. It's like Jon Snow is done, right? After Jon Snow, we need to do. Yeah. So all these divs will have the class of comments. They will have a common class of comments. Why? Because what we need to do is we need to actually make all of these comments look in the exact same manner, right? For each one of these comments, the name is at the same place, the icon is at the same place, and the comment is also at the same place, right? So we can give all of these comments the similar class, the same class, and then when we edit it using CSS, automatically all of them will look like this. All of them will look exactly the same, which is what we actually require, right? So I've added all of them, all those comments here. I think the divs are missing. There should be two divs closing. Yeah, and then there should be the section closing. Perfect. Just indent this a bit. Yeah. Now, guys, as you all can see, we started the comments from here from Jon Snow, and then all the other divs have the same class of comments. They have the same class of comments name, same class of comments comment, because all of them need to be edited in the same way. That's why I've added the same classes for all of them. Only the names are different. Even the comment is same. Okay, so don't worry about all this. The copy pasted part is exactly the same like I covered. Let me run this and show you our entire HTML, because our HTML part is now over. We have this header section, then we have the video, which is working fine. Then we have the icons, then we have the comments, and then we have all of these, right? Yeah, so the HTML part is done. Any doubts with the HTML part? Guys, did you all understand the HTML part? Just respond in the chat and I'll begin with CSS. We have 1 hour to finish CSS, but the CSS part won't be that tough. All right. Okay. So guys, the new tags which I didn't show you before while we were covering only the HTML topics were hardly any. There was header. So header tag is used to group the things at the top together. You can see the description here as well. The header element represents introductory content for its nearest ancestor. And then we had this main section. Main section is for the entire middle part of our content. And then we had an aside section for all the content here on the right, which is like placed differently than all the content on the left. Yeah, of course, Jared. Practice as much as you can do, the better. As many clones as you can make, as many properties as you can use, it will be the best. The comments you have added individually. Uh, yeah, that happens because of database and how the templates are already created, but that's mostly backend driven. clear. Okay, so we can use loop to write comments if it's same. We can't use loops, Shyamlal, in HTML. Okay, HTML is not a programming language. It's a hypertext markup language, right? This language is used to create components and web pages. It's not for the programming purpose like JavaScript and Python. Its use is totally different. So yeah, you can create loop in JavaScript, then connect it with your HTML file, but directly in HTML you can't do that. Okay. All right, guys, sounds good. Let's now come to the CSS part quickly because it's almost 150, 180 lines, although the properties are very small. But still, it will take us some time, 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes. So I think we should begin with that. My video might be shaking because of the table was shaking, but now it would be proper. And about that background noise, I have no idea from where it is coming. Might be the AC, I think, but yeah. Should I try changing my microphone? Let's see. 1 sec, guys. Hello. Is my voice more clear now? No, no, actually, the table might be a little loose. Is the voice better or was it better before? Previous voice was more clear. Should I change it back? Guys, please respond so that I can move forward accordingly. You all are here for a workshop, not just to watch a YouTube session, right? There are a lot of voice was better before, previous one was better. All right, I'll change it back. Yeah, I'm audible now, right? Yeah. So let's move forward in this way only. So now, guys, coming to CSS. So like HTML files have a suffix of .html, similarly, CSS files have a suffix of .css. Okay, so I'll just create a file here, not in my main section, of course. Let me go here only and create a file. Let's call it youtube.css, and I'll create one more called general. Oh no, not like this. Sorry, general.css. Yeah. So we have two CSS files. First of all, let's see how we can connect them to our HTML file. So whenever you want to connect your CSS file to your HTML files, you can add a link tag. Okay, you can add a link tag just like we can see here as well, right? Just like the link tags you can see here, you can use them to connect your CSS files. Okay. And all you need to do is give them, okay, type is not necessary. So I'll just remove this. And href part is given for writing the name of your CSS file. Inside the href attribute, you write the name of the CSS file, whichever you are connecting. And inside the rel attribute, you always write style sheet, which just represents what type of a file you are connecting. And since CSS stands for cascading style sheets, that's what the relevance here is. Okay. Yeah, Rajesh. Uh, that actually part comes from the database. Okay, like in the database, if some comment is added already, there is a template on the website and some space given in case that comment needs to be added. So all of them are connected like that. It's a huge dynamic backend process. I can explain it just by words. Yeah, let's come to the types of CSS now. Yeah. So first of all, let me just connect these files first. So we need to connect the general.css and we need to connect the youtube.css. After that, guys, there are three types of CSS that we can use. One type is inline CSS, another type is internal CSS, and another type is external CSS. So if we are, of course, connecting external files to our HTML file, that form of CSS is called the external CSS, right? Other than that, we have inline CSS. So let's see what I mean by that. Mostly in CSS, there will be three major things that you will have to focus on. First is what you are selecting. Okay, what you are selecting as in which component you are editing. So you will need to select that component first, right? So you will use either that element's name directly to select it, or you will use its class name to select it, right? That's how it works. So that part, whatever you are selecting to edit it using CSS, that part is called the selector. Okay, so let's say if you are selecting the body will be your selector. Okay, if you are using a class name, then that class name becomes your selector. Then the second most important thing is which property you are applying to your component. Okay, whether it is changing the font size, whether it is changing some colors, whether it is changing positions, all of those things are different. Then after that, the third most important thing is what value you are giving. So the first one was a selector, what you are selecting from your HTML file. Second was what property you are changing. For example, font size, background color, image, links, anything. And then finally, what value you are giving. Like, of course, if you're changing a font size, you will need to give a value to that. Like, what value you are changing that font size to. Okay, that needs to be given as well, right? Yeah. Coming to Tarun's question, whether inline CSS is better or internal, I will say that if you have a lot of CSS to write, always use external CSS. If you have some, always use internal CSS. Now there is something called as specificity. So we could have selected an element, let's say the div element, using either writing div, okay, by either writing div directly and just selecting it, or we can also use its class, or we can also use its ID, right? So now there can be a scenario where you have given a property to the same div using its component's name, that is div, or using its class, or using its ID. So now if you have given three properties to the same div using three different selectors, then which one will get applied? That you can understand by understanding the specificity of a component. So whenever we are selecting a component using maybe its ID name, or maybe its class name, or maybe its component's name, you can calculate its specificity and understand that which property will get applied in case there is the same property getting applied on the same component twice, but maybe using different selectors. So in that case, the specificity value for writing a tag name, like if I want to select directly body, I will write body and I will give curly brackets. Okay, that's how you will go inside the body. And then this body here is my selector. Okay, and if you are using the selector as the element's name and you are not using the class or the ID, then the specificity value will be 1. Okay, if you are using a class here as well, so let's say we wanted to select our first div or something and its class is wrapper. So to select a class in CSS, you will give a dot, okay, dot symbol, and then write the name of the class. That's how you select the class in CSS from HTML. Okay, to select the class from HTML, give a dot and then simply write the name of the class and whatever properties we might apply, all of them are always given in these curly brackets. Okay, now after that, whatever property you are applying. So the specificity value for using the selector as the component's name is 1. As you can see, it shows also selector specificity is 001. If you use a class, the value of the specificity is 10. That's why it shows as 0, 1, and 0. Now let me just find an ID here somewhere. We might have given an ID. Let me just check. Yeah, here is an ID of, let's say, search input. So like we select a class using the dot symbol, we select an ID using the hashtag symbol, and then we simply write the name of the ID. So the specificity value for the component's name is 1. For a class, it is 10. And for an ID, it is 100. So This shows us that IDs are the most specific, and let's say you have the same property getting applied to all of them, okay, to the same component, then always the one that is selected by the ID will get applied instead of the one that has been applied using either the class or the component's name. So this was about how we select elements in CSS. Now, if you want to change a specific property, there are various properties that exist. One of them is, of course, the background. And in CSS or in coding, we always write color as COLOR, not the actual spelling that we use in India, but this is actually the US way of spelling it. Okay, so let's say I give the background color as red. That, let's see, I'll just remove these things which don't have any property. Now if I run this, let's see whether we are getting that background change. Yeah, we are. That means our CSS file is now connected with our HTML file. Coming to that question once again about internal or inline CSS, guys, inline CSS is the most specific, as in it has the highest specificity compared to internal or external. So if you want a property to be definitely applied and it's just maybe one or two properties, you can always give it using internal CSS by just adding a style attribute, I mean, here inside the tag, give an equal to sign, and in quotes, you can always mention whichever property you would like to apply in the exact same way as we write it in CSS by writing the property name first and then by writing its value, and both of them are separated using a colon. And at the end of each property, you have to give a semicolon, because if you have other properties to give here as well, then you would need to give it in the same curly brackets. That's why after the property and the value, we will give a semicolon at the end of each property. Okay, I hope there are no doubts now. Yeah. Is the CSS part clear till now, guys? The ID selectors, specificity, the types of CSS, are all of them clear? Any, just type yes in the chat. Okay, sounds good. All right, guys, great. So I think we can begin with the CSS part of our project. In the middle, I will keep on explaining each property that we use on how it is affecting our project. Okay, because let me tell you a few of them now only, which are the most important. So let's go back to the CSS, run this, make sure we don't have any CSS going on right now. Okay, so guys, in CSS, we have, this is our inline CSS that started working. Okay, so I'll just remove this one as well. So now, guys, in HTML, for each component or each component inside a container, we have a box layout that you can edit, okay, which is also called a box model. How this box model works is, let's say you have a button, okay, and inside that button we have some text. So now that text will be inside a boundary of the button, right? So whatever is the gap between our content and the boundary of the button, that area can be changed by using the padding property in CSS. So the area between the content and the border of the button is actually the padding area that if you want, you can edit. If you don't want, you can let it stay the same. After padding, right after like the border, or I should say the outline, comes our border, of course, which you can keep this much thick as well. You can keep it very thin as well. But right after the padding part ends and we reach the boundary, that boundary of the entire container will be its border. And the spacing between this entire component and the components maybe next to it or below it or on the top of it, excuse me, that space will be given using the margins. Okay, so this is how we do this one. Yeah, coming back, I'll just repeat this part once more. So let's say you have a button and you have some text in its middle, in the inside part of the button. So the space between the boundary of the button and the content in the middle is the padding area. The space right outside it is the border, and the distance between the other components and this component can be edited using the margin. Okay. uh, yeah, Prabir, there is also an option to play a video using simply the video tag in HTML. If you type video tag on Google, it will give you all the things you require to understand how you add a video using the video tag in HTML. But since we wanted all of these controls in a video, play, then changing its position, just watch later, settings, adding all of these using only the video tag is very tough. Okay, that's why I've added an iframe instead, so that we get all of those things in one. All right. So guys, why I've created two files is because inside one of this file, I will have some very basic CSS that will just remove everything by default. So by default also, some elements maybe have some margin, some elements maybe have some padding. So I don't want any default values to be given to all of those things. Everything I want to edit myself, all the spacing I want to give myself. So whatever values might be there by default, I can remove them by simply selecting all the tags that might be there in our file and keeping the margin to 0, padding to 0, border to 0, and that will remove all the default spacings that might be there here already. And if I just run this, there will be hardly any changes, but still there will be a few spacing changes, removing any space that we might have had before, and now everything is very close because we will be editing all the things ourselves. All right. So this is just some general line height is like how much space one line will have. Now all the links by default, they have an underline. They might have some color. If you want to remove that default underlining, you can always use the list style property of none. Okay. Border collapse, border spacing, this though it's not even getting used because we don't have a table, but still these are actually the properties we can use to remove any kind of default spacings or content or default styles that might be there in our file. That's what we are removing using this part. Now coming to the normal CSS that we'll be doing ourselves, that part I'll begin with. So first of all, I'll give a font family to our entire body to change the font. So I've given the font and you need to mention its families. That's how you apply a font. Another way of adding fonts to your CSS files is by using simply Google Fonts. You can go to the Google Fonts website. You can select whichever kind of a font you like. And once you click on it, you'll be able to find its link tab to include it in your HTML file. And then you'll also find the CSS that you need to add to include it in your CSS file. If you just use import, you can add this import line in your CSS file and that will include that particular font. Once you have included its link, you will be able to use the font family attribute. General CSS, Prabir, I would suggest that whenever you also might require to remove those default spaces, if you want that, what you can do is select all the main components that you have and at least give it the margin, padding, border, those things to 0. Those are because mostly the default things we would have to change. Other things we mostly don't change. Okay, so after this font family, let's select the header class. Okay, the header tag that we have. This is our header tag, right, which is having all these links on the top. So that's the part of us we are going to edit first. So let me go to the youtube.css. Let me make sure I've given the right name here. Yeah, youtube.css, so it will work. Let me just make sure this CSS file is connected. Every time you connect the CSS file, you can make sure it is connected by just giving any simple property and checking whether it is working or not. If it works, that means your CSS file is connected. Yes, it is. And if it doesn't, that means you might have done something wrong with your link tag. So you can just verify. This is how you debug your code, guys, because in HTML and CSS, you are not going to get any errors like other programming languages. All you might get is an unexpected output. You might be expecting something on a particular point, but maybe you are not getting it or getting it at a different position. So for such cases, you can always debug your code by going back to checking the things you added before. Yeah, Praveen, but that part was not necessary because that was just some general text with some pseudo classes. Pseudo classes are usually they work with hover and everything. So since links and all of them by default have some hover color change, that's why I've just removed those as well. Okay. Text increase. Oh yeah, sorry. I'll just zoom in. Yeah. So we have just added a font family to the body as of now. Now I'll select our header section. Now since I'm using the tag name directly, I don't have to give either a dot for the class or a hashtag. But the specificity for this is very less. But since we only have one header section, that's why I'm directly using its name. Okay, inside this header section now we can have various kinds of display properties. Now how do display properties work, guys? So sometimes you might notice that our content might take an entire line. Okay, like let's say, let me open the first div. So as you can see, that div is extending till the entire width, right? But the next div is also running the entire width. So these kinds of elements that by default, even though it might have very less things inside it, but they still take the entire width, these kinds of elements are known as block level elements. Okay. And the types of elements that only take the space till the point where they are being extended to, those are actually called as inline elements, which are our text and paragraphs and headings, because these things only take as much as space as they are extended to. They don't take anything extra unless they are put inside a div, of course. So such elements are called as inline elements. Other than display and inline elements, by using CSS, you can change how a component is acting by using the display property. Okay, so you might have inline for it taking only the space as much it is covering. You might use block for it taking the entire width, and then there is another property called as the display grid. How the display grid or the grid layout in CSS works is it allows you to divide an entire section into rows and columns. So if you will be able to divide it into rows and columns, it will be very easier for you to place them, to position them properly. And that's when we use this grid layout module. So the CSS grid layout module offers a grid-based layout system, like I said, with rows and columns, just like a table, making it easier to design web pages without having to use positioning specifically. So you can create such tables, such containers with different cells inside it using rows and columns using the grid layout. And how you can start this grid layout is by adding a display property of grid. And that's all you need to start a grid layout. Okay. After this uh, grid layout, you can also mention how much area something might take. Okay, for that, the property we use is known as grid area. And since I'll be using, let me just show you from the docs only, the grid area property, it will be much more explanatory there. So it specifies a grid item size and location. You can mention where it will start from, you can mention where it will end from, and you can also use this property to name particular items in a grid. Like you can name the table that I showed you, you can name its top section something, you can name its bottom section something else using the grid area property. And by doing that, later on, whenever you are applying any kind of styles to it in the grid layout, you will be able to use this name and apply that style to specifically to that particular container. So to this entire grid area, I will give the value of header as its name. Okay. After this grid, what I'll do is let's add some height to this entire header section, but the height will be very small, as you all can see. Only this much is the height. So let's add some height here. So I'll use the height property, and let's just give a value of around 55 px. After this, as you can see in the output, we have this thin border just below the header section, right? So that is nothing but a border bottom property. Whenever you want to add a border, you can use the border property. If you want to apply a border to a specific side, in this case just the bottom, then you will use the property called border bottom. And then the syntax of defining a border is, first of all, how much is its width? Second one is, what is the type of that border, whether it is solid or whether it is dotted. Okay, I know about these two types. There might be other types as well. Yeah. So there might be other types as well, but for now, you can remember that there is a type that is called solid, which is this, that is a continuous border. There are no breaks in the middle. And then there is also one more border called the dotted border. Okay, these are the two basic types of borders you will always use. Then inside this border bottom, what I'll do is, first of all, I'll mention its size. Okay, how much thickness it will have. And of course, it was very thin, right? So I'll just give, let's say, 2px here. And then the type I need to mention, so it can either be solid or it can also be dotted. And there are other types as well. There will be there the suggestions, but still, we will use a solid border. After the solid border, you need to mention a color for the border. So I'm going to mention an RGB value here. This RGB stands for red, green, and blue. And in the brackets, you would need to mention the three values for red, green, and blue. If the minimum value you need to give is, of course, 0, and the maximum value that you can give is 255. Of course, I'm not giving the maximum value here because 0, 0, 0 will be the black color, and 255, 255, 255 will be the white color. So I'm keeping an off-white kind of a color and adding it as the border bottom. Let's see the changes here in our output. Yeah. So as you can see, as soon as I change the grid, we have the border bottom. But because its height is very less, that's why we are not able to see the search icons as of now, right? So as you can see, we can still see them a little bit, but they are still below this video, this iframe somehow, they are below it. Okay, and of course we don't want that, right? So to change the height of elements, like let's say there are two overlapping things and you want one of them to be on top of the other. Okay, so in this case, if we want, let's say, the search part to be on top of this video, I can either change the videos or this section's parts Z index value. Like we have the X and Y axis in two-dimensional spaces. In three-dimensional spaces, we get another coordinate, that is the Z coordinate. So you can remember it like this. Whenever you need to change the 3D part of a screen, what is on top and what is on bottom, you can use the Z index property. And by default, the value of the Z index is 0. So if you want this to be below it, you can keep it as -1 or -2. And if you want it to be above it, you can always keep it as 1, and that will bring the icons which have the Z index greater than the other on the top. We'll just position them better in a bit so it will be much more visible then. Okay. Now let me just add some grid template columns. So I told you all that whenever we are starting a grid layout, we need to give the display property of grid, and that will allow you to divide your contents into rows and columns, right? But you also need to mention how many rows there should be or how many columns there should be, and to mention them, you can use the grid template columns or the grid template rows to define that. Inside this property, if you give one value, let's say 150px is the size of our first column, So if you give one value, that would mean that your grid only has one column. If you give two values, that would mean that your grid has two columns. And if you give three values, that would mean that your grid has three values. So that's how much we'll be dividing this part into, because we have three parts. This is the first part, the search bar is the second part, and these four icons are the third part. So I'm dividing it into three columns. Columns are the vertical sections and rows are the horizontal sections. So since we require three vertical sections here, I have divided this grid layout into three rows. FR is just a unit that sizes everything on a scale. Like one FR is one scale, two FR will be double of it. Okay. So now I've added how many columns I want in my grid layout, which are apparently three. Then what I'll do is I'll add some padding. So how we add padding is, I told you, padding is the space between the content and the borders. So if you give the padding one value, that would mean that value for all the four sides. If you give it two values, that would mean that first value is for the top and bottom, and second value is for the right and left. If you give it three values, that would mean that the first value is for the top padding, padding top, second value is for the right and the left side padding, and third value is for the bottom padding. But if you give four values, that would mean that it will go in a clockwise direction starting from top. So starting from top, the clockwise would be top, then right, then bottom, and then left. So I've given zero padding on the top and bottom, but on the left and right, I've given a little bit of padding. Is the padding part clear, guys? Just respond in the chat if you understood this. Everyone understood the box layout, right? Okay, great. Others, I've just gotten one response. Sounds good. All right, great. Let's refresh this. Yeah. So as you all can see, our grid is now divided into this horizontal columns, only three columns. This is one, this is one, this is one. Let's now, of course, position it a little bit better. So I can add it, I can shift it a bit towards the top, and I can also increase its width first of all. So if ever you want to change the width of a particular component, you can use the width property and even give it in percentage. That would also work. You can give the width value and these spacing values in percentage as well. Now, one more thing that we saw in the output was that these things don't move even if we scroll down. They are fixed at one point. So to keep them fixed at one point, you can give it the position value. Now this position part, guys, is very important, because once you give this position property, it allows you a lot of possibilities. What kind of possibilities? First of all, to keep it fixed, you can give it the position value of fixed. Then once you give an element any kind of a position property, there are different values that we will see as we move forward. So if it is fixed, it won't move. But if you still want to edit its initial position, you can either give it a top value that would shift it. Let's say if you give 10px, that would shift it 10px from the top. If you give it a bottom value, that will shift it from the bottom. If you give it a left value, that will shift it from the left. And if you give a right value, that will shift it from the right. So most of the time, it is suggested that you either use top or bottom, because of course you can't keep it the same value from both the sides, right? That will just be the center. So either use top or bottom, or use left and right. So you can use the top and right together, you can use the top and left together, but don't use top and bottom together, and also don't use right and left together. That would be my one suggestion to you all. Okay, so after this, to shift it a little bit from the top, I won't shift it 10px, we already have very less height. I will instead shift it a little bit upwards. So to shift things upwards using top, you will have to give it a negative value. Okay, and that will shift it towards the top. all right? Because from bottom, we would have to give a lot of amount of space to keep it at the very top. That's why I've given top and a negative value. That's much easier. Then I will also, let's say, give it a background of white. So the background color properties allows you to only apply a color to the background, but with the background property, you can actually apply a URL as the image. You can change a lot of things. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. Use the background property directly. Now we have the display, grid area, border bottom we have added, height we have added, the number of columns we have shown. Let's give it some margin from the bottom from the other elements. So I'll add a margin bottom. You can also specify in the properties the direction of a margin or padding, or you can give it like I showed you, one value or two value or three values or four values. That part is up to you. So margin bottom will be, let's say, 10px. Now let's check this entire part once. Yeah, looks a bit better. Of course, it will be made much more better as we move on. Till now, we have selected the entire section. Now let's specifically select the header logo part, which is the header logo class. Let me just show you all in the HTML file. So the first section is the header logo section, and that's what we are going to select now. And what I'll do to that is that header logo, I will convert again into the grid layout. Okay, so once I've converted it into a grid layout, I can keep two columns. Both are having equal sizes. Why? Because inside this first column, I've just divided one column for this icon and another column for the YouTube icon. That's what I've done by displaying here that there are going to be two columns with the display property of grid. Okay, so if I run this, let's just check. Yeah, so as you can see, it got spaced a little bit. Now we can come to the search part as well. So let's take the header icons first, which were not the header icons. Let me show you that. These are the header icons that we have. Okay, so I'm going to select those header icons and I'm going to do the same thing to them, but instead of two columns, how many columns will I add for these icons, guys? How many columns are going to be there? Can you guys quickly mention? Like we had two columns here for these two icons. For this top right part, how many columns should I create? Anyone? Anyone with a guess? Even if it's wrong, it's fine. No? Okay. I'll tell you all. So what we are going to do now is we are going to divide all these four icons that you can see here. They are very close. Okay. These we are going to divide in four different columns. And how we divide that is by selecting its entire section using its class and the dot symbol. And then simply we are going to give the display property of grid that allows us to convert it into columns. And then we just mention the number of columns we are selecting. So now when I refresh on my output, they should be much more properly spaced. As you can see, yeah, they are at the very top, but that part we can still change. The profile icon is coming fine and all of them are at least spaced from each other now. They were not like that before. Sorry. After that heading, I will just select the search part and give it a greater width and give it some margin. Now guys, the margin, as you can see, the value for top and left is 0. Like padding only, the margin values also work. So this auto value is for left and right. Anyone who knows what the auto value does? Anyone who might have an idea about what the auto value is used for? Okay, so in that case, I'll tell you what we do using the auto value inside the CSS property is we actually use it to align it to the center. So when I give it the value from the horizontal sides as auto, it will automatically give equal space from the left and from the right. Very nice, Shabla. Exactly, it gives equal margin from left and right. So I'll just run this and hope that the width is increased and this search part is at the center. Yeah, almost at the center, but because there is another section starting from here and this section ends a bit earlier, that's why it's still a bit towards the left. Because we have divided this part into a grid as well, right? So it might have a border somewhere here. So this entire section center is this. Of course, we'll place it in a much better way. So now I'm going to select the ID of search input. Which one is the ID with search input? Let me just show you all that. This one, the input type of text that we have, we gave it the ID of search input. So that's the one I'm going to select. The symbol for selecting an ID is a hashtag. So I'll use hashtag search input. And inside this input, let's increase the font size. Okay, whatever the user will type, the font size we will increase a little bit. Here, as you can see, the font size is quite big. Here, if we see, it is very small. So I'll just increase it a little bit more than its current size. So the current size, if it's 100%, a bit more will be like 103%. Width can be changed to 100% of its container. Okay, I'm only selecting the input type and giving it the width of 100%. If I would have selected its container, it would have taken the entire space. But the input type is inside the form, so it will only take the form's place. Now, like when you want to keep the position fixed, we give the position value of fixed. But whenever you want some elements to be placed in respect to others, or when you want some elements to be positioned with respect to another element, what you do for that is give it the position value of relative. Now let's say I have one container. Let's say this main container is there that is storing our video and this description and these views and everything. So I would want to place this video at the top, then only the description. So to the entire container, I will give the position value of relative because everything will be positioned in relevance to this main container. And to every specific element that I have that I need to place according to this main container in relevance to this main container, to all of those, I will give a position value of absolute. So this is how position absolute and position relative works. The main container according to which the other things have to be positioned is given the position of relative, and the ones who are supposed to be edited according to that container or positioned according to that container, they are given the position value of absolute. So to this search input, we'll only give it relative. If you directly give absolute and there is no container with the position value of relative, then it will automatically be relative to the main body. So in that case, the top zero value will be right here at the top for position absolute and no position relative. This relative, I'm shifting it a little bit towards the bottom. So top is 12px and the padding is just the gap between the content and the sides, which is a little small px. Let's check out the input part now. Yeah, as you all can see, our input type is much bigger now, like it is there in our final output. And now we can move forward to the search button. So the search icon. Let's select the search icon using its class of search icon. Okay, one second. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, okay. So inside this search icon now, let's also give this a position of relative. Because this one also is relative, we'll just give it some specific position instead of positioning it according to the search input. So that's why I've just given it the position of relative. After giving it the position of relative, there is a CSS property that allows you to maybe force something towards the right, to the right corner of its container, or might help you to force something towards the left corner of its container. Make sure that you are listening to this container keyword. Okay, I don't mean the entire width. The entire width isn't one container. There are specific containers inside this because of the grid layout, right? So this container will end somewhere right before this icon. Okay, so if I give it the float value, the float is that property that helps you to force something towards either the right or the left. So if I give it the float value of right, it will automatically be shifted towards the right. Let's just run this code, see how the button is changed. Of course, you would have to give it some more properties, but for now, yeah, its position is now somewhere on the right. Now let's position it a little bit more to make it look very proper as we require it to be. So first of all, it is very much at the bottom as of now. It is below this container. So let's shift it a little bit towards the top. So for that, I will give a negative value to the top. Let's say minus 15px. Then, other than top, I can also give it a height. Let's say around 28px. And after height, I can also give it some width. Let's say 40. After width, let's shift it a little bit towards the right. Okay, towards the right we need to shift it. So what I'll do is, let's see where the corner is. So here, as you can see, the corner is right here of this container. Okay, so what I'll do is, I'll shift it a few more pixels from the right. Okay, or instead from the left also you can do, because this icon is starting right from here, right after the search icon. So we can shift it a little towards the left by giving it the left property, let's say around 40 px again. Let's run this, see whether it is looking good or not. The search icon we just positioned, right? Yeah, it increased its size. It is very much at the right also. Let's increase it a little bit more. So instead of 40, let me give 45. And instead of top of minus 15, see, I didn't mention px here. That's why it didn't go to the top. If I mention px, it will also move towards the top. Let's refresh. Yeah, now it is at the top also. Let's shift it a little bit more towards the top, maybe around 17px. And a little bit more towards the right. So I'll just increase the value a little bit. And now I think we should be done with our search icon as well. Yeah, so as you can see, now our search icon is also done. Moving forward now, guys, I'll be going a little bit quicker as we have less time remaining, but the most important things in CSS that I wanted to explain to you all properly, I've done that, like the positioning part, absolute, relative, fixed, and then the box layout that helps you with the padding and the margins, and then the float property, I hope everyone is now clear with, and also the display value of block or inline, or if you want to convert your contents into grid rows and columns, you can always give them the display property of grid and define how many columns you want, how many rows you want, and all of those things as well. Okay, next. After this, after the search icon, what we are going to edit next is our hamburger logo inside the header. So I will just give it some position element and some value from the top to shift it a little bit towards the bottom, this hamburger logo. So that's why you can't use these top property or bottom property or left or right unless you are giving it the position value. Okay, so make sure you only use these top values, bottom, left, right, after giving the position properties. All right, so after this hamburger logo, I've shifted it a little bit towards the bottom. Let's just make sure it works, and then we'll do the same thing for the YouTube icon as well. So as you can see, now it has shifted at the center. Now let's do the same thing with the YouTube icon as well. So I'll just select the YT logo and change it from the top PX. I'll shift it a bit from the top. Same thing again, just a little bit less because this icon is bigger than the other. So now if we check this one, YouTube is also now centered, as you all can see. After this YT logo part, I will now come to the header icons. Okay, which are the header icons? Let me show you all of them. Yeah, header icons, header logo. These are the classes I'm going to use next. Okay, so to the header icons grid, I will add a position property of relative again and give it some value from the top and left to position it properly. Okay, here as we can see, it is like at the top and it is very much towards the right as well. So what I will do is I will give it the position value of relative and shift it at least from the top 17 px and from the left 20 px. Like from the left, the gap should be 20 px of the first icon and automatically the others should be placed. So if I refresh this now, we have some of the icons proper, some are still at the very top. So what I'll do is specifically now select the upload part and also position it from the top and left. This upload button I'm selecting next. This one I have already selected. So let's select the upload part, again give it the same property, then select the bell icon and again give that the same property and the same properties to the profile section as well. I'll just change the profile sections width a little bit. Rest top left values you can always give, try if it looks good, fine. Otherwise changing its value, it's like very easy, right? Of course you can change its values and make them look very easily aligned. So as you can now see, now they are properly spaced from the left as well as from the top as well as from the right. And the profile icon is also not very big now. So all looks great, right? I think our header section is now done. As you can see, this and this looks exactly the same, right? Like there's hardly any difference here. The search icon is too much on the left. I've just made it better. You can keep it even more at the left if you like. That's up to you. All you have to do is change the value inside the left property or the right property to do that. So that's pretty easy as well, right? After this, next, let's come to our main wrapper, which is our main wrapper class. Let me show you that as well. So here we have the main wrapper. This is the wrapper class. And if we just go down, this is our main wrapper class. Okay, and here's where I'm going to start now because we are done with the header section. Congrats. One section is done. The next part, I'm sure, will be done pretty quickly. Okay, I hope because we lost like 5-10 minutes in the middle, that's the amount of extra time I'm going to take. And maybe hardly maximum 20 minutes I'll take from now on, guys. So please just wait till like 6:20 and then I'll leave you all. Yeah. So next, let's select the main wrapper. Okay, so let me select its class, which was dot main dash wrapper. And first of all, what I'll do is change its display property to grid so that we can take all the elements inside it and position them according to rows and columns. That's what the display property of grid helps us with. And you can also mention how many columns you want by using the same property as we have used before. That is called grid template columns to mention the number of columns. So if you have given 4 values, there will be 4 columns. If you have given 2 values, there will be 2 columns. Similarly, you can use the property as grid template rows as well. But since we are defining things vertically more, I'm using the column property. So after giving the display of grid, I can also add some margin top, let's say, so that there is some space between the header and this. So there are 2 units we use. One is EM. Another one is rem. Other than px, you can also use these units as em and rem. Now what em does is it scales the element according to its parent size. Like if there is a heading inside a div, then that div is the parent of that h1. Similarly, if you are using rem here, rem is another unit. Then one rem would mean the smallest default size in HTML, which is that I think of a p tag. And then if you give 2 rem, it will be double the size of a p tag. Okay, that's how rem work, and em works according to the parent. So if there is like one heading inside a div and you give the size of 2 rem or 2 em to the heading, then it will be twice that of the container. That's how this works. EM and rem. Then I can just mention grid template columns. Okay. So now if you notice, I have given a min max value here instead of giving a value directly. That would mean that it should be between 200 and 90. Okay, that's what this means. I've given 2 possible values. So one scalar value can be used for the phones because whenever we are sizing things according to the phone, we might want to use these scales instead of px. That's why I've given both the values here. After the grid template columns, I'll just give some margin again. Let's see how it is looking right now, whether we need more margin or not. No, we still don't see the top part of this video, so I'll just maybe change the margin top to around 5. Yeah, yeah. Let's try this. Yeah, looks much better now. Okay, so now this looks quite the same spacing as our main output, right? After this search input, let's move forward. Okay, inside the main wrapper, now we have given it the apt spacing. Now let's come to our main tag. We had that main tag for everything in the middle, right? So that's what I'm selecting right now, the main tag. And inside this main tag, I will add some margins to all the sides because this main is our actual container. So in the output, you see some space on the left, right? And we see some space on the right as well in the entire web page. So that's the margin of the main container. So that's why I'll be adding a margin. Then inside this entire main container, we have this one section with the comments and the video and this description. And we have another section here on the right. Okay, so what I'll do is I will change this entire main section into 3 particular columns. Okay, this video is totally different, but this everything else I will be dividing into 3 columns, and then I can also apply some names to them, and I can also mention the number of rows inside it. So let me just show you how we do that. I'll put the code here and explain. So yeah, first of all, margin values on all the sides, especially on the left and right. From the top, we have already positioned it, so we don't need to give any value to the top margins. Displays grid, gap between one cell of the table and the other will be 1.5 em. There will be 3 columns and 2 rows, where the first row is very small than the second row, and to all of these we have used the grid template areas to define each and every section of that grid layout. So as you can see, this is the first column, the second, the third in the first row. This is the first column in the second row. This is the second column in the second row, and this is the third column in the second row again. So this is how we give margins and the display grids to our entire main section that we had. And as soon as I did that, one part is on the left, the next part is in the middle, and the comments are on the right because we have 3 columns, right? That's why it got divided like this. Okay, there was a huge change here. That's why the display grid property can be so helpful. It can be very easy for you to use these containers that we gave so many of them, right? We give so many containers, so that can help you in this way. You can use the bigger containers to just divide your content into various sections like this. Okay, is this part clear, guys? Did you understand this last part? Just type yes in the chat. Any doubts? All right, that sounds good that you guys understood this. Perfect. So guys, focus. Only like a little bit is remaining. Hardly the amount that we have done, almost that much is remaining. Okay, so tick tick sound. Sorry about that. I don't know where it is coming from. All right, guys, let's move forward. So after this main section, the next section that we had was our section tag. Okay, right now I'm specifically selecting the containers. Okay, then I'm going to move forward to the specific things that we might have. To the section, I will give it the name of section. So grid area value will be section, and that section I will change it into 2 particular rows. Why 2 rows? Let me show you that as well. Let me find the section tag. Where is it? Yeah, here is the section tag, right? So here in the section tag, first we have the comments, then where are those comments? Yeah, here they are. So how we need them is like this, right? We have in one row, we have the comments and the sort by part. Then another row, we have the icon and the input part. So that's why we are dividing it into two rows, so that one row can be for these two things, another row can be for the other two things. So let me just add that CSS part here. Yeah. So here I've added two rows. I've kept it in the center from top and bottom. And then I've added a grid gap. The display property of grid is definitely required if you want to use these grid properties. And I've given it the name of section as well. Let's just see. This is the part that we just edited and converted into two rows. So let's see how this changes. Yeah. So as you can see, the line changed, right? And all of them are in different lines. Of course, we'll do it in much cleaner ways. There are more things to give. This is just given to the main section. Now let's specifically come to the comments inside that section. So let's give it some value from the top, a position relative, and the same width to all of them. So a width of 26.4% apparently will keep it somewhere in this space because it is inside a specific container, right? So it can't have the entire width to itself. That's why I've mentioned a specific width here as well. Let's just see what difference happens in the comments. Yeah, some width properties applied. These videos are too much on the left as of now. That part also we have unadded. So let's now select the section sort container. Section sort container, I'll again position it relative, give it some width, give it some left value, give it some right values. Okay, these are the basic positioning things that you do, guys. That's why I always recommend you all to put your components inside divs, because that will help you to later on position them much more easily by directly selecting their containers instead of having to select maybe an inline element specifically or maybe an absolute element specifically. So instead of doing that, we should always create divs and do the positioning part on top of those divs instead of specific elements. Okay. Now, after this section sort container, I will select the paragraphs inside this section sort container. How will I select those paragraphs is very easy. You need to write the name of the class, and if you want to select the paragraph inside that container, you can always write the name of the tag right after that. This will help you select the paragraphs inside this container. If you want to use all the paragraphs, you can always give a greater than sign. If you want to select only one paragraph, then you can give a plus sign, and that will only select one paragraph. These symbols are actually called combinators in CSS. So space will allow you to select all, greater than will allow you to select all, plus sign will help you select just the next one, and there might be one or two more, but these are the most important ones. Okay, so inside this select section sort container, all the paragraphs, I'll position them, give them a font size, give them a color, and give them their positioning. So some left and bottom. See, left and bottom are together. Here also left and bottom are together. Don't keep left and right together. Never keep top and bottom together. Always use one from the horizontal part and one from the vertical part. If I refresh this, yeah, as you can see, all of them now have a particular color and a particular font size as well, and it at least looks a little bit similar to this. Of course, there are more things to do. So after the paragraphs, let's select the anchor tags, which are our links. So as you can see, these links have some underlines, right, and a color. So we don't want these here. As you can see here, we just have some underlines, but the reply at least is not like that. So I will select the same container and I will just change its text decoration of the anchor tags to none. That will remove that default underline that we have been having. Okay. And after that, I will select the profile part and give it some width. And then I will select the profile image and give it that width. So first I'm selecting the images container, and then I'm selecting the image inside the container. So section profile is the container and section profile image will be the image inside this section profile. Okay, let's just see how that changes our profile part. Yeah, as you can see now the size is a bit smaller, just like in our main output. Great. Next, what do we have? After the image, we are going to be selecting our input container. Okay, input container is of course that input part that we have. So first we will select the container, give it some positioning. So position relative, some value on the left, some value from the bottom, and some margin, right? And after that, we'll be selecting the input inside that container. So inside this container, we have that input tag, right? So I'm giving it a width of 100% because here, the width of this input, as you can see, is 100%. Till here, this component is going. So 100% will be only till here, not till the entirety, of course. So this part is what we just edited. Its font size, its color, all of the basic things. And now if we refresh, we should be able to see the changes in this input type. Yeah, as you all can see, now we have that input type right next to the profile icon. Okay. All we had to do was add a few properties like a border bottom for this line underneath it. Can you see a line by default? There is a line underneath it. That's the border bottom. Then we gave it a font size, a color, a border none removes any default borders so that we can only add the border at the bottom. Okay. And then I will just select the comments, the paragraphs inside the comments and the anchor tags inside the comments and their containers and give them the positions and the font sizes. So inside the comments, we have paragraphs and anchor tags. If you want to select two classes together, you can always give comma between the selectors and select multiple things together. Okay, that's how you can select two classes together. You could have used different class names there as well. Okay, yeah, as you can see some positioning happened, but we still need to do the reply part. Okay, so let's get on to that. All right, next we have the anchor tags inside the comment name, because we can't apply the same properties to paragraphs and anchor tags. Yeah, margin and position can be common, but the text decoration, the color on anchor tags, the right value on anchor tags might have to be different. So I'll change that. And to keep your text bold, you can always use the font property or font weight, to which you can give the value of either 100 or 200 or 300 till 800, where 800 is the darkest text type and 100 is the most transparent text type. Okay, so I did this wrong. Yeah. All right, comments look a little bit better. Next, we will just select the comments underscore comment. Let me show you that file. One sec. Yeah, which class do we have? Comments underscore underscore comment. Okay, these are the properties we are selecting now. Where the main comment is written, there is the same property given to all the comments, right? So I'll be specifically selecting each paragraph tag and then doing the positioning changes or whichever other changes are required. So let me select that class comments.comment, and then I'll just change its position and give it some line height and give it some value here. Okay, yeah. So this was about the comment. After the comment, we can change that like part as well. Okay, that like section that we have, like and dislike together. That part we can keep inside three different columns maybe, or maybe inside a simple grid layout, so that all of these three things, the reply part, the dislike part, the like part, and that 1K is in the same line. So to achieve that, I'll be using the grid layout again inside the likes container. Okay, so to the likes container, I will start a grid layout and I will give it a repeat value, so that for all the grids, because we have multiple grids here, that's why it has to repeat with this particular value for all of them. Now if I run this, the comment should be looking much better. The like, dislike and the reply part should be in one line. Yeah, they are. So now by keeping it in a grid layout and just a single column, they are now in just one specific line. All the comments, since all of them had the same class, that's why all of them got edited together. Inside the comments text section now, below them, we can add a position, remove the text decoration by default from this view all 7 replies. So I'll do that next. Okay, so text decoration will be none. And other than that, we change the position and change the color of the text, of course. Let's see. This 10 months ago, as you all can see, has now changed. All right, from the replies part, I'll change now. The replies inside the comments, this view all 7 replies part. Yeah, the comments replies class it was. Let's check. So every time you apply a property, you would know what you are selecting, you would know what you are changing. If you feel that there is a difference between what you are expecting and what you are getting, you can always inspect it and make sure the code is proper if you are getting different outputs. After that, I'll just add the main video class. Okay, let me show you that class of main video where it is. Main video. This class at the top that is storing our iframe, right? That's the main video class. So here if we notice the video size is very less. Here if we notice it is pretty big. Yes. So that's the part I'm gonna change now. I'm just gonna add a main property. One sec. CSS, not this one. Yeah, the main video property is added with the grid area as video. Okay, this is just the name given to that section. And then border bottom is added and some padding is also added. Let's see. Yeah, now we can see that it is positioned properly. These videos are totally on the right. Okay, we have the comments at the left bottom. This extra space we can remove. But first, let's increase the size of this video. Here, as we can see, it is filling the entire container, but here it is leaving a lot of space. So let's see how we can fix that. So after the main video, here was the main video. Yeah. After the main video, I will select also the section part inside that main video, change the font size of the entire text, give some margin to the text that we have there, keep the text on the left and the right. As you can see, I'm right now talking about these things here as well. Okay, ESPN, all of them. So let's first edit them. So we have selected the main video and the section tag, just change the font size. Then if you want to select, let's say some paragraph inside a container, but only the first one, you can either use a combinator or you can add an additional class of first of type that will select the first element, the first paragraph, and the last of type will select the last paragraph. These classes which are given with colons, they are actually known as pseudo classes. Okay, so this first of type and last of type are one of the pseudo classes that are just additional selectors that we have. After these selectors, I will select the main description, the subscriptions part, the name part, and add some padding, borders, and some float to most of them. Okay, so we have added some border bottoms for these lines here. Let me show you that line here. We have a border bottom. Here we have a border bottom. These things I'm talking about. Okay, to all of them we have added a border bottom. Then float left and right, like I told you, it just forces the things towards the left and it forces things towards the right of the container. That's what the float property does. Line height defines how much space one line is gonna contain. That's what the line height property does. After that, next, we'll select after description, we'll again select the sub description now. After the description, we had the sub description and the first paragraph. We will add some margin to its right. And then inside the main section, let's change the font size of the text a little bit, add some margins, remove the default text decorations. Okay. So So yeah, that would be this. Now the main video container, okay, inside which our iframe is there. So I will write main video and finally container to increase the size of the video. So first of all, I'll position it relatively so that we are able to use the top or left or bottom, whatever we like. After that, let me give it some padding at the bottom. So padding bottom can be like 52%. After padding, we can give it some padding on the top as well to that live video. So let's say around 30 px. And finally, if you ever want to remove the scrolling options, like sometimes you might not want your web page to go from right to left. For that, you can add an overflow property of hidden, and that will make sure you don't get that scroll bars. Okay, that's what the overflow hidden value does. Let me just change the height as 0 as well. All right. In video container, position is relative, there's padding bottom, there's padding top, then there's overflow hidden and the height mentioned. Let's just see. These are the things, guys, around our video, the text around the video, all of those things we had been editing, the font size. Yeah. So as you all can see, the space is now added. These things are spaced properly. The text size has changed. The padding has been added. The margin on the left is also there. Now the next part, I think, would be to, let's say, change the iframe size. So iframe is inside a container, right? So I can just change the width and height of iframe, and that should do the trick of increasing the size of our video. So that is pretty easy. I will just select the same class once more. So I'll just copy paste this main video container. Okay. And inside this main video container, I want to select the iframe. So I'll write the name of the tag there and just give curly brackets. Now this one I'll give an position of absolute so that it will be positioned relatively to its container, right? So I want it to be at the top of its container. I want it to be at the left corner of its container, but I want it to have 100% width and 100% height. So width and then height will also be 100%. And now finally our video should be filling this entire section. Okay, and it should be taking the entire space around it. Yeah, as you all can see, now the video has the entire screen size. It is very much looking like this. There are some things though that still need to be added. Like we haven't selected the aside part yet. Okay, so this right section is remaining. And then there is one more thing that we will give to make sure that our project works for all screen sizes. Okay. So first of all, I'll select the aside container and give it the grid area of aside so that from now on we can mention it as aside. Then the image inside the this first image that we have, it is a little bit different here, right? As you can see, there is some gap around it. It has a border bottom as well. So that part I will select using the first image inside the aside container, give it some border bottom, give it some margin bottom, give it some padding bottom. Then I will select the entire container, give it some margin, and then all the links inside this container will be shifted towards the right and its font will be changed. As you can see here, this autoplay part is also at the right. So that's what we are gonna add next about the aside section. Okay, so I selected the aside part, gave it the grid area of aside. Then the image, this first image, I've added a margin bottom, a padding bottom, and also a border bottom. Then to the top encounter some margin, and then finally to all the links, the float, and all these things. Let's see whether it worked or not, whether the video is now divided from the other videos. The first one now should be divided from the other videos and the autoplay should be at the right, exactly. This autoplay still needs to be shifted a little bit towards the top, but at least the underlines and everything are coming pretty good. All right. So after this, let me select all the paragraphs inside that aside container and the video containers inside that, give it some paddings. And after that, to the other containers, I'm just going to give some width, the specific color that they have, the specific font weight that they have, and the specific center alignment that the text has. So we have show more at the bottom also that we need to edit. So let me add these things next. We have a lot of CSS, as you all can see, but many of these things are repetitive. Okay, I know they are repetitive, but still they have to be selected specifically. That's why after showing them the first time, I've been copy pasting it, because the repeating things, I'm just telling you once more, I'm not writing it myself, otherwise it would have taken us till 8 p.m. That's why I'm just copy pasting this part. Okay, so we have now edited the text and the links inside this right section. Okay, let's see how this looks. Yeah, much better. The show more also looks much better. There is some additional styles on the link which we can remove now. Okay, so let's move on to that part. Yeah, so after dot aside more, I'll just select the link inside that container and remove its text decoration. Okay, perfect. So now guys, our CSS part for the bigger screen is over. Okay, but what if the screen size is reduced? In that case, our web page looks like this, which is really bad. We don't want this. Whereas the other website that we have, our final result keeps it very proper. So guys, how do we define that how our web page should look if the screen size is less? How can we define that in CSS? Does anyone know? Any idea, guys? How can we define in CSS as to how the CSS properties should work if the screen size is less? Do you know what we use for that? All right, we actually use something called as media queries. Okay, and these media queries can define that how much should the screen size be and what properties will get applied if the screen size is that much. Okay, those are the things we can uh, explain using this media query. So let me just show you how. Whenever you're starting a media query, you will write @media, and then you can mention whether you want it to work for all the printers, the laptops, the iPads, screen readers. There are so many things, but the most important one we are going to be using is the screen. So if you only want to select that, you can give the only keyword and write screen, because screen part includes phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, everything is included inside this screen part. So now after starting the media query, only screen, and finally and then you can mention whatever you like. So if I want to mention that, let's say the maximum width should be 560px. This is somewhat of a tablet or a landscape phone. Okay, so instead of 560, let's first do it for tablets only. So 1002, around this 1000px you can say. And what CSS property should be applied for such screen sizes? To write them in the exact same way right after mentioning the media query. So once you have mentioned the media query in the curly brackets, you can write the CSS as it is as to how you want it to be in the case of the screen size being this. So this part I'll just add very quickly. What we are doing here is inside the main section, we are just reducing the sizes of the margin. We are reducing the grid template row size. And inside the iframe, we are just making sure that our width and height of the iframe doesn't decrease. Like I showed you, we weren't able to see the video. So I'm just making sure that doesn't change, but it still remains at the top. Okay, so the iframe we have changed. Aside, we have changed the width to 50%. Okay, so that it's lesser, it doesn't take this much of space here on the right. So we have reduced that size as well. And the last media query I'm going to add is for a very small screen size, and in such cases I will just say that the body's minimum width should be so and so and the maximum width should be so and so. Let's run this. This was very easy. We just changed the iframes and a few more things, and now if we try to reduce our screen size, let this refresh. Yeah, we'll be able to see the video in the same size even for the smallest screen size. And that's how then the comments are there, the videos are there, and the comments are there. Okay. So guys, that brings us to an end of this project. Okay, let me just use Drive and maybe show you all those things. I think there should be an option to upload a folder. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just share the link of all the images that I used with you all now. Okay. Now I think there was a word. Source code. Yeah, sure. One second, guys. Yeah, okay. Okay, guys. So this project had a lot of CSS properties. It had a lot of HTML elements. Okay, there are so many things here to learn. There are so many things, different things as well. There were similar things working out as well. So I hope you understand most of these things. I know they were different. Sometimes they were mostly the same. But how we proceed here in our AccioJob courses also, first we complete some concepts and then we move on to making projects using those concepts. Because many people might have a degree related to CSE, some people might not. Okay, so what companies will look for is whether you actually understand some concept or not. And how will you prove that you understand it? By either showing it to them during the test, or of course, by showing your projects, right? So make sure you do all your projects properly, you practice things well so that you can understand most of the things. And let me just send you the Drive link. Why am I not able to access this? One second, guys. Copy link. Check. Yeah. Right now, I know we all were in kind of a hurry to finish the project, to understand so many concepts in just a 3 hour session, right? But I hope you all at least got something out of it. Uh, Create a channel to join the chat. All right. One sec, guys. I think I have to log in. Will we have another beautiful session like this, Taran? I'm not sure about that right now, but of course, I think you all get regular workshops, right? So these sessions will be happening. There might be different types of lectures as well. So I think you all get regular workshops. And the certificates will be provided to you all. Don't worry about that. Source code कहाँ से मिलेगा? Source code भी I'll make a Git repo, guys, and I'll make sure that all the participants get that. Otherwise, I can just find an online link with this repo and send it to you. Okay, that might work as well. So either way, I'll make sure one of the links reach to you all, whoever has filled the form. All right. We can make another responsive CSS. Okay, I don't think there are any more doubts. Okay. Yeah, Charan, I'm glad you understood and you enjoyed the lecture. I'm sorry about the breaks we had in the middle, guys, because of the internet connection. Okay, so sorry about that, but I hope you all understood. I know I had to hurry things up to finish this project, but always, instead of making things like calculators and the most basic things that we have in coding, what you all should try is to make various clones, or at least to make complex projects which can actually prove your skills to the various companies out there as well. Like, of course, somebody who sees a calculator in a project or instead sees a YouTube clone in your projects, you know which one will help you more and which one your employer will also focus more on. Yeah. Yeah, of course, Prabir. Once you practice this, if you have one line, if you have any doubt, you can always Google it. You can always search for it. The docs are the best resources possible to understand things specifically. Of course, I wouldn't recommend you all to start a programming language with the docs, but I think I've sent the link, right? I haven't. One sec. Uh, get link. Yeah, you guys have the link now to all the images. Okay. Yeah, and you have the AccioJobs message to fill the form to get the certificate as well. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Prateek. So, guys, if you are working with AccioJob, all of these things will be happening in a very considerate manner, in a very step-by-step manner. Like we first start with DSA, then we start with front-end development, then we start with back-end development. Of course, with each of these courses, we have almost 50 lectures covering each topic and almost 20-30 projects in each thing. Okay, so it goes on till a span of almost 2-3 months for just like one of these. Like for front end development, it will be almost 50 lectures with like 5 lectures a week. So okay, that's a lot. You get regular practice, you make regular projects, you learn new concepts. All of those things happen, and of course, in a much more step-by-step manner as compared to today's session. You can't see the drive link. Guys, can you see the drive link? Can't see the link. How is that possible? Yeah, I've sent the link. Source code, I'll get it shared, guys. I won't send the source code like this here directly, Okay, my link is not coming. One sec. And this drive, guys, one sec. I'll just share the link from my phone. I think the messages was visible from there. All right, found it. Now can you all see the link? If project link is if you have coded along with me, then you can put your link there. Otherwise, even if you don't, I think that would be fine. Okay, I'll just ask someone to respond you guys regarding these questions and everything. Okay, don't worry. Okay. So guys, about the certificate, you have the link about the questions that you have in that form. Somebody will be answering to you, maybe in the chat, maybe through audio. That will happen. But I hope the project was clear to you all. And I'll be leaving now. I hope you guys understood everything. It's just that, guys, focus on front end. When you do the front end part, you always need to focus on practice. Don't worry about memorizing stuff and things like that. Please focus on practicing things, practicing the positioning parts, practicing the grid layouts. Those things are the most important parts. Okay. I've sent the drive link, guys. You can scroll up, it will be visible. Yeah. I'll just send it again. Okay. No, I'm not able to send a chat. Where's that? Yeah, I think that. No, it's not. Okay, guys, I'll just get that link shared as well. I think I'm not able to respond to you guys in chat. Okay. I'll just ask someone to share that link with you. Okay, project link is mandatory, sir. What to do? You will get the answer. Somebody will be answering your form related questions. I was just here for your project and everything. All right. How much depth knowledge is required to have junior front end role? Charan, mostly they at least ask for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Then, if you can do some CSS frameworks, very nice. If you can do JavaScript frameworks like React and Angular, that's also great. In the front end codes at AccioJob, we first start with HTML, CSS, and Java and Bootstrap, which is a framework for CSS. And then all what happens is we move on to JavaScript and then we move on to React, which is like a combination of all of these things: HTML, CSS, JavaScript together. Okay, so that's how we usually move forward, and then we finally do Redux, which is for the phone part. Okay, and there will be this video uploaded. It will have a description where everything will be added, all the code details, everything that you need will be added there. Okay, don't worry. Yeah, you have gotten the reply from AccioJob as well on what you need to do about the project link. I'll make sure that in the video description, the link to all the coding files that we use today are there. Okay. All right, guys. So it was very nice to take up this project. It was a long session, but I hope you guys didn't get bored and understood everything. I'll be leaving now. If you have any questions, you'll be responded in the chat through our team. Okay, and I hope you all practice well. Bye bye, everyone. See you all. Yeah, thank you, Charan.